Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
We are live on a Monday edition of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Hennings producing today's show. You out there. We've got a ton of stuff to get into today, including the Phillies at the All-Star break. I was at that disgraceful game yesterday. Holy mackerel, was that bad. But Phillies overall at the All-Star break, 62 wins, most wins in Phillies history at the break. They're just the fourth team in National League history to have 62 wins by the All-Star break. What does that mean for them? It's a message that Rob Thomson has talked about a lot. You know, every time someone says to him, hey, your team is really good, they've got this many wins at this spot at the season, and his answer is always, well, what did those previous teams do? So I like how Thomson, and we talked a lot about how he is the right manager for this team. He acknowledges that 62 wins doesn't guarantee you anything. All these teams from the past, all the wins that they have piled up, what has it done for them? Right? Overall, the Phillies have been the best team in baseball. They have persevered through numerous injuries to high-quality players. Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, Alec Boehm. Those guys have all missed time on the injured list this year, and now they're dealing with it a little bit again here. Some pitchers are kind of going through it a little bit. Suarez is not going to pitch in the All-Star game. By the way, Christopher Sanchez has been added to the National League All-Star team. Suarez will not pitch in the game tomorrow night. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. You know, the 74 Dodgers, the 73 Dodgers, they both had 63 wins. The 70 Reds had 62. And it doesn't mean you're going to win the World Series, right? You take a look at the teams that have won 60-plus games at the All-Star break. Really, one of them stands out, the 18 Red Sox, as the one that was able to win a plethora of games before the break and then continue. That's the hardest thing about this game, is remaining consistent. How many teams have we seen in the recent past? The 2011 Phillies won the most games, got them buckets, nothing. Last year, we've seen the Braves. We've seen the Dodgers. They've all won over 100 games. It all resulted in nothing. The team in the American League, people forget because we don't, astutely pay attention to wins and losses generally on the American League side as much as we do on the National League side. But we know the Braves won over 100 games. We know the Dodgers last year won 100 games. But we also forget the Orioles won 100 games last year, and they got nothing for their efforts. Tampa Bay has been a team that over the years has won a ton of games in the regular season, and that didn't amount to much. In 2002, the Braves 101, the Mets 101. The Dodgers won 111 games. None of those three teams won a World Series. So while the amount of wins and the season they're having is special, you remember the 2001 Giants won 107 games. The Dodgers won 106 that year. And it was the Braves who ended up winning the World Series. So regular season wins do not define postseason success. That we know. But what we also can take away from this 62-win Phillies team, which right now, they are 3.5 games the best team in baseball. They are way out in front in National League East. They are 8.5 games up on the Braves as we hit the break here. 62 wins. No other team in baseball has eclipsed 60 yet. If I was to ask you who the second best team percentage-wise in baseball is right now, does anybody have that answer? The Phillies have a .646 win percentage. Which team in baseball is number 2?
The Guardians.
The Guardians is the correct answer. They are 58-37. How many people look at the Guardians as the second best team in baseball? They are .611 winning percentage, followed by the Baltimore Orioles at .604, and then the Dodgers at .577. That is the 4 best teams in baseball right now. Philadelphia, Cleveland, Baltimore, L.A., and number 5 would be the New York Yankees at .592. In fact, .592 was ahead of the Dodgers, so they would be 4, the Dodgers would be 5. But that is how wide open it is right now in baseball, is that the Cleveland Guardians, who, by the way, we were talking about this last week, the Phillies' schedule when they come out of the All-Star break. By the way, they just got beat 2 out of 3 against a dreadful A's team.
After sweeping the Dodgers.
They lost Friday night. They win on Saturday. And then yesterday, I was at that game yesterday. And let me tell you, it was one of the most miserable experiences of my sports life. It was just hot, miserable. The Phillies actually had a lead in that game.
They did.
Trey Turner hit a home run, and the Phillies were up 1-0. And then the home run derby's tonight, but it got started yesterday at Citizens Bank Park, and all of the Phillies pitchers apparently signed up to be batting practice pitchers for the derby because one by one they proceeded to give up the long ball. But even so, the game was 7-1, and then the Phillies did score 2 runs in the 6th to get back in the game. It was 7-3. The Phillies got back in that game, and it felt like they had a shot. And then home run. I mean, some guy no one's ever heard of, Butler, had 3 homers. Another guy that no one's ever heard of, Brown, had 2 homers. And then Rooker hit 2 of the farthest balls I've ever seen hit in person in my life.
According to John Clark, he said on Twitter that Rooker is the first non-Phillies player to hit 2 home runs in the same game to that part of the ballpark.
Well, they both went over 450 feet, and they were just absolute Titanic blasts. And after the first home run that he hit, of course, the narrative was the asking price on Rooker just went up.
Right.
After the second one he hit, I mean, you would have to start thinking about Aiden Miller being included in any trade for that guy. He was 2 for 2 with 5 homers, 2 home runs. He had an unbelievable weekend, by the way. I mean, Rooker, if he was trying to make an impression on the Phillies and say, hey, you need me in your lineup, you want me in your lineup, he absolutely did everything possible to make them say, we have got to get that bat in our lineup. So for those of you, who'd never heard of the guy, Brent Rooker, now here's the thing. He is the designated hitter for the A's. He has not played in the field since, I think, May 10th was the last time he appeared in left field for Oakland. He is hitting .291 with 21 homers, 18 double, 61 RBI. He does not play in a lineup that's all that loaded with a lot of protection around him. You also saw Mason Miller pitch on Friday night. He threw 3 or 4 straight pitches that went 104 miles an hour. I got to be honest, I don't think I can ever recall seeing someone throw 104 miles an hour, let alone 4 straight pitches at 104 miles an hour. So Rooker, if anybody was asking, hey, is this guy a right-handed bat that could help the Phillies lineup? I think you got your answer. The question goes back to, what are you giving up to get him? What would it take to get Brent Rooker out of Oakland and into Philadelphia? Just think about that right-handed pop. The 2 bombs he hit this weekend, or yesterday, I should say, because he did have a really good weekend. The 2 bombs that he hit this weekend Just think about that and him hitting in the 5 hole or even in the 4 hole behind Harper, and then maybe that moves Bohm back to the 5 spot.
So Rooker last played in left field May 30th. He has played a total of 9 games this year in left field. He has started 4 games in right field, so he has played 13 games in the field this year.
Yeah, 13 games. That's not a lot. I mean, he has not really played a whole heck of a lot. By the way, over the weekend, 6 for 11, 2 homers, a double, and 4 RBIs. And the one ball that he hit, it might still be traveling. I mean, it was I was in attendance, and it was a Titanic blast. Now, here's his numbers splits this year against right-handed pitching. Now, remember, he's a right-handed hitter.
Right.
He's hitting .281 with a .362 on-base percentage with 11 home runs, 38 RBI. Against lefties, he's actually worse. He hits .262 with 7 homers, and now he has 61 at-bats against lefties. Of course, you face righties more than you do lefties. But his splits are way different. In other words, he can hit righties as a right-handed hitter. He can hit lefties as a right-handed hitter. The question you would have is, what do you do with them in the field? Are you willing to? Also, another question is he a platoon player? Is he a guy that hits every day and just plays left field and he's your left fielder? Or is it a guy that platoons with Brandon Marsh in left field? I doubt that. I think if you got – the question, though, is do you want him playing left field every single day? I can't imagine – look, he doesn't play in the outfield all that much.
So in the 117 games in the major leagues he has played in the outfield, Mike, he has a .978 fielding percentage. So you could say he's a competent outfielder. Maybe not a great fielding outfielder, like in terms of like athleticism, but in the games he has played, 117 starts, he has a .978 fielding percentage.
Yeah, I mean, listen, no one's going to mistake the guy for a Gold Glover. So are you as a Phillies fan just enamored with the right-handed power bat to get him and put him in the outfield? I mean, then, look, there's so much we can dive into from this weekend, but I thought the biggest takeaway was the 2 guys that you have heard connected to the Phillies, Rooker and Mason Miller, both showed you why the Phillies should be interested. Miller was overly impressive on Friday night.
Miller's probably going to be borderline unattainable. Because remember we talked about last week, Buster Olney said on the Baseball Tonight podcast, there are a lot of teams desperate for bullpen pitching.
Are the Phillies one of them?
I don't think so. I think yesterday was more of an anomaly than anything else.
I'm a little surprised. Okay, so I get to the game and I find that Kerkering is starting. And I'm wondering, what was the reasoning behind Kerkering throwing the first inning of the game? Why not just start Mercado?
Maybe they just wanted to see him in a different situation. Different environment, different circumstances.
Kerkering?
The Phillies maybe wanted to see him. Like,
well, what? I mean, seriously, come on. They wanted to see him start a game. Like, at what point of his career or on this team is he ever going to start a game?
I'm just trying to rationalize what their thinking is.
That's my point. There is no rationalization of this. Why did Kerkering? Why not Mercado? So you pitched him 1 inning. He has a flawless inning, right, and then you take him out of the game, and then you go to Mercado for 4 innings. Like, what's the purpose of that? Why not start Mercado, just see how much you can get out of him? And now, obviously, he had a tough day at the office yesterday. He gave up 3 homers. I would imagine Michael Mercado gets sent down and we never see him again.
Which is a shame.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it's part of the.
It's a shame, you've got opportunities, and he gave up 3 home runs against Atlanta last week and 3 home runs against Oakland yesterday. It's not a shame. It's, hey, that's life in the majors, man. You can't get people out. You give up 6 long balls in 2 games pitched so far. I mean, I'm not even counting the other. He did pitch well the 1 game that he started against the Cubs. He's given up 6 homers in his last
2 outings,
2 or 3 outings here. So, Mercado is probably going to be replaced, I would imagine. You don't see him again.
Well, I'm assuming that Walker is going to come back from the injury list soon, and then Mercado will just go down the minors when he comes back, right?
Yeah, one or the other. You have – so Kerkering starts the game yesterday. He pitches an inning. Now, mind you, Kerkering's a right-handed pitcher.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'm trying to remember the A's lineup. Like, did they have a couple left? Like, I don't know. I don't, like, if you were using a right-handed pitcher to get left-handed hitters out, I know Kerkering's better against lefties than probably Mercado is. But okay, why didn't you just start Strahm then? You know what? I don't. It did make a lot of sense to me in that. We'll talk to McGarry and Bob about that. But the Phillies bullpen yesterday, Dominguez, terrible. Ruiz was terrible. Now, it was hot as heck up there. The game got out of hand. I'm not going to put a lot of stock into that. But do the Phillies have to, again, kind of put a microscope on their bullpen? Garrett Stubbs, by the way, did not pitch well. He did throw strikes. I mean, 25 pitches, 15 of them were for strikes. But, yeah, it's funny.
Were you yearning for Roman Quinn to come out of the bullpen in that situation?
No, I was looking for, who was the guy?
Adam Hazley?
No, Adam Hazley. They never used him.
That's my point.
So
Roman Quinn used to come in every once in a while.
We were at the game. It was so hot, but we stayed. Like, we weren't leaving. You know, we hung out all the way to the end. But it started to the skies got real dark. You could see that the storm was coming. Now, I don't know if the storm ever got there. So we got up from our seats and just went under the concourse. We went into the store, say, in like the 8th inning. And I hear Fransky say, well, that's the first run that the A's have scored that hasn't been on a home run, at least. You know, so they scored and it makes it like, whatever, 14-3 or something to that effect. So as we're walking on the concourse, I hear all the changes for the Phillies. Like, this guy's at this position, you know, now playing shortstop is Sosa. Weston Wilson moves from left field to first base. Christian Pache, he's there. This guy moves to this spot. And now pitching for the Phillies, Garrett Stubbs. I said to my girlfriend, they have Stubbs pitching. She said, I think it's time to go.
Astute observation by her.
Yeah. So we were in the team store, which is like on the third base side, the big one, the majestic one. Well, there's another one out in Ashburn Alley, like a smaller one.
Okay.
So at that point, we walked from there to the one out in Ashburn Alley. And inside there, the game had ended. Okay. So because we were trying to stay away from the storm. It looked like it was going to just open up on us. We're walking to the car, and I said Stubbs was pitching, and he gave up a grand slam in the time that we were in the store.
Yes, he did.
I said, she's like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, yeah, I said, the final was 18-3. The best part of the game yesterday was there was a guy sitting behind me who had a flying WVU branded into his arm.
Into his arm?
Yeah, I got a picture of it. I'll show it to you.
That's commitment right there.
He went to West Virginia, he said. And
I would hope he did.
He showed me he has a WV branded into his forearm.
That's almost like a Colt-looking thing.
Yeah, I said, man, that is, because...
Is he part of a fraternity or something?
I don't know, but we were discussing... The two guys behind us, they were season ticket holders, and they said they were going to PNC Park.
Okay.
And they had asked if I ever been there and like outside the stadium. But I said, yeah, I've been there a bunch of times. I was there when it first opened because I went to West Virginia. And the guy shows me his arm. I was like, this guy's, younger kid too, by the way. He wasn't like an old guy.
Hey, man, cult followings come in all shapes and sizes and ages, right?
Yeah. He was a good kid. I mean, he's going out there.
According to your one interaction with him.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I can go off of.
I mean, typically, if someone's got a branded in their arm, I'm a little like,
I was a little concerned.
Giving the side eye to him. Like,
concerned.
Are you gonna start doing chants something over here? Like,
no, they were very well behaved.
Were they?
They weren't out of hand. They actually bought beers and brought them back to our seats and offered them. He said, "Hey, we bought you guys a beer." And so I said, "What a nice guy."
Thoughtful.
Yeah.
So he's a thoughtful cult follower. Okay, got it.
You're saying cult, not me.
That's what I said. Yeah.
I'm not saying he's in a cult.
I'm just saying anytime I see a brand on someone's arm, I'm like, there might be something going on there.
I don't have that same feeling. No, he was a good guy, nice kid. He just really enjoys his tie to the school. That being said, that was the best part of the game yesterday. That game was brutal to be at. It was we didn't take the free beer. He offered us the free beer.
Oh,
yeah. It was so hot. It was just not enjoyable at all. The only thing in that game that turns out to be a positive was Trey Turner, who hit another home run He also
Monster.
made an awesome play at shortstop yesterday. And that's about it. That was about the extent of the positives in that. Bohm hitting 2 doubles. Bohm was very good in the game yesterday.
Your boy.
And he'll hit tonight in the All-Star Game Home Run Derby. And you can listen to that game on 97.3 ESPN. Yeah, Turner was 2 for 2. Bohm was 2 for 4 with a couple of doubles in the game. And everybody else basically did not show up. They were the only 4 hits in the entire game yesterday. Literally, other than Kerkering and Strom, who sadly had to come in relief to get Dominguez out of that mess.
Yeah.
Not one of the bullpen arms threw well either. Mercado was horrible, Dominguez was horrible, and Ruiz, they were all equally horrible, and Stubbs was obviously not good either. So it was just an overall awful day, but it gets us to the All-Star break. We're going to dive into all of that coming up. 62 wins, most in Phillies history. What I want you guys to throw into the mix, 609-403-0973. You saw Brett Rooker. Are you willing to maybe give up more than you were willing to give up before you saw Rooker? You know, if I said, hey, you got to include Aiden Miller in a deal to get Rooker, do you change your mind? If I say you got to include Justin Crawford or Andrew Painter, do you guys say, you know what? I saw enough of Rooker to say, do whatever it takes. Mason Miller, Friday night. I mean, he's throwing 104 miles an hour. And by the way, I don't know how many people caught this. Not only is he throwing 104 miles an hour, he's got a little cocky attitude, too. He throws the pitch. The umpire doesn't call it a strike, and he kind of put his finger out like, that's a strike, dude. But I'm throwing so hard that maybe you didn't see my fastball, so I'll just throw another one there, and maybe next time you'll see it a little better. I mean, did anybody catch that little antic that he threw his finger out like strike, and the guy didn't call it a strike, and he was like, yeah, give me the ball. I'll throw another one. He threw 4 pitches back to back, 104, and then he ended the game with 101. It was like he took his foot off the gas a little bit and said, here's 101, maybe you could see this a little better. But Mike at EHC says Rooker put on a pretty good audition this weekend to be the guy the Phillies need to add. Seems like he likes hitting at the bank. That's important. Phil says, Mike, I don't know much about the A's, but they will definitely be sellers at the deadline. Never heard of Brett Rooker until this past weekend, but wow. A power right-handed outfield bat, a perfect fit. What would it take? That's the thing, Phil. Did his asking price just go up? That would be number one. Number two, he's a right-handed outfield bat who doesn't play the outfield all that much. He has not played in the outfield since May 30th. And what did you say? He's only played 17 games in the outfield all year.
19
games. So he is not known for his defense. It would be akin to sticking Rhys Hoskins out there.
Yeah, maybe he's like
probably better than Rhys.
He's probably somewhere between Rhys Hoskins and Pat Burrell.
Yeah, Pat Burrell would probably be a pretty good comparison. Now, you did win a World Series with Pat Burrell.
He did win a World Series, so maybe that's a good omen.
Yeah. Rooker and Miller, by the way, they did travel. I know Miller did. I don't know about Rooker. They traveled with the Phillies All-Stars to Texas. Yeah. It was like the Phillies said, we'll pick up the plane tickets for these guys.
Right.
You know, I know you're Oakland. We know you're struggling for some cash. We'll pay for the plane tickets for Miller.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some good favor if we try to make a trip with you later.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. What do you guys think? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. It's the Sports Bash. Just getting started. We're kicking off the day on Home Run Derby Day. What are some of your favorite games, moments, plays of the first half of the Philly season? Let's try to remember some of the plays and moments of the Philly season. Let us know. 609-403-0973. What would it take to get Brett Rooker here? I don't have that answer. We'll talk to Gary. We'll talk to Bob Wankel, Jim Duquette from MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM, former Mets general manager tonight at 5 o'clock. He was a GM in this league. If Dave Dombrowski just saw that performance, what is the interaction between the two GMs? Is Billy Beane still the GM of the A's?
He is.
Or is he like higher up?
I think he's like the president of baseball operations. He's kind of like Dombrowski of the A's.
So Dombrowski sees that in his ballpark. Does he go right to Billy Beane and say, all right, Billy, what do you want? How does that interaction go? Jim Duquette tonight, former MLB GM, 5 o'clock right here on the Sports Bash. Plus, no top 10 for Jalen Hurts Is that blasphemy or is that accuracy? We'll discuss football at 4 and more here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals. That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
With Mike Gill
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
on 97.3 ESPN.
2:31 MLB Home Run Derby tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Alec Boehm representing the Phillies. He was about the only guy along with Trey Turner that showed up yesterday. That was a dreadful performance at Citizens Bank Park. 18-3. They get beat 2 out of 3 against Oakland to close out the first half of the season. It's funny, you sweep the Dodgers, one of the best teams in baseball, and you lose to the A's, one of the worst teams in baseball. That's why it's hard to sometimes take a lot from some of these games. But we'll take a look at the weekend, which I think, by the way, Mike McGarry was there Friday and Saturday night. He did not have to sit through the heat yesterday. But I think Phillies fans got introduced to Brent Rooker over the weekend. Forget the 2 bombs he hit yesterday, Mike. He had a big weekend. And I imagine the asking price just went up on Rooker if you're Billy Beane in the A's.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he definitely impressed with the bat. My question about him is he's not really a outfielder. He's barely played the field this year. I don't think he's played left field since May 3rd. He's basically a designated hitter. He's basically like Kyle Schwarber, same sort of player. So I don't know if he is what they're looking for. Certainly he is that right-handed bat at the plate, 20-something home runs. They're obviously looking for that. But they need a guy who can play the field, and I don't know if he's that guy because he hasn't done it this season at all.
Yeah, he's played 19 games in the field, has not played out there since May 30th. He's a right-handed bat. He can play left field, but generally, as you just kind of hinted at, he is a designated hitter. But after watching what he did as a right-handed bat, do you suffer defensively to get that bat in the lineup?
Well, that would be the theory, right? Left field at Citizens Bank Park is not a very difficult field to play. You do not have to cover a lot of ground. Kyle Schwarber did it all of last season. You're talking about a guy, if you were to go get Rooker, he would be probably a 6 to 7 inning player if you had the lead. He would come out after the 7th inning, and you could probably put Marsh in left and then put Rojas in center field and show up your defense. And much the same way that back, in 2007, Pat Burrell was basically a 6-inning guy for the Phillies when the Phillies had the lead. From an offensive perspective, he's a perfect fit. If he was more of a fielder, he would definitely be a perfect fit. The bat I have no issue with. The fielding would worry me, but yeah, if you could, I'm sure you could get away with him in left field. They did it with Schwarber all of last year.
Yeah, I know that people saw this weekend. 450-foot blast, and then he followed up with another one. But it wasn't just those two, Mike. He really hit all weekend long in a lot of big spots in the game. He certainly showed being a right-handed bat. Friday night, you got to see Mason Miller in person. I don't know that I've ever seen a guy throw 104, let alone 4 straight times on the gun. What was it like seeing him in person with 104? And then was there any buzz or murmurs of, all right, you got to go get this guy?
Yeah, he's another guy. Obviously, Weston Wilson gets the base hit off him, basically shatters his bat. Here's Mason Miller. He's just throwing 104 miles an hour over the middle of the plate. I guess if you're throwing 104, you don't have to hit the corners. You can go right down Broadway and dare people to hit the ball. Again, he is a guy that when you look at the bullpen and you look at, Kirkring has had some shaky outings. Alvarado has had some shaky outings. He was shaky on Saturday, although, I don't know if that was his fault. They put him in a game that was 11-3, 11-4 at the time, and a lot of times when you do that with high-leverage relievers, for whatever the reason is, they don't seem to perform as well in those situations as they do coming into a game where they have a one-run lead or the game is tied for whatever the reason is. But, yeah, Mason Miller is a guy, and I believe he hopped on a Phillies plane to take the ride out to Texas for the All-Star game. I mean, yeah, those two guys, Miller and Rooker, are definitely two guys that would look good in Phillies uniforms. What impressed me a lot about Rooker, too, was if you look at the A's lineup, they had no other lineup. I know it didn't seem like that yesterday where even the Bat Boy was hitting home runs onto Ashburn Alley. But you're talking about a lineup that features a bunch of guys hitting 200 or below. So you figure the opposing pitcher would say, I'm not going to let Rooker beat me. But that's what he did yesterday, at Citizens Bank.
Yeah, they pounded out 15 hits, 8 home runs in the game yesterday from guys no one's ever heard of before. It was just unbelievable watching every ball hit. The crowd was just like, oh, my God, another one here. You watch Rooker. You saw, obviously, Miller. If you're Dave Dombrowski, are you making those calls to see if you can get them together?
Yeah, I would be interested in bringing those two guys in. Again, the caveat with Rooker in the field, I think Miller is a no-brainer for any team's bullpen, right? Who wouldn't want a guy who throws 104 miles an hour with closing experience, and you bring a guy like Miller in, and now you're backing everybody down one spot. Now you have Kirkland, Strahm, Hoffman, Alvarado, and Miller. You're talking about maybe getting 5-6 innings out of your starting pitcher and being able to protect the lead. So, yeah, those are two guys that kind of fit what the Phillies need. Right-handed bat that can play the outfield and bullpen help. That's what they need, and those two guys fill that role.
Mike, you wrote about it on Friday about Ranger Suarez. He's not going to pitch in the All-Star game. He did not pitch well again on Friday. You said, where's his mojo? What are you taking from Ranger here the last week or so, last couple starts, and not pitching in the All-Star game?
Yeah, I'm worried about Ranger Suarez. I think there's flashing red lights all around him, basically. He did not look right. He has not pitched, I think, with the same sort of verve that he had early in the season. The life is not there on the ball. On Friday night, he said it was because he was trying to be too perfect. He was trying to aim his pitches, right? Then we come on Saturday and find out that, hey, he has had some back issues, or he had some back issues in Friday night starting. And it's interesting because usually in post games, we go into the Phillies clubhouse and Ranger is always there immediately. The starting pitcher talks after every game to the media, and usually when we walk in, Ranger is waiting to talk to us. Well, when we walked in on Friday night, Ranger wasn't there, and it took we had to wait about a half hour for Ranger to come out. We find out, that seemed unusual to us. And then we find out the next day that he was probably getting some treatment for his back. Yeah, I'm worried. The back injury, he's thrown 114 innings. His career high is 155. Hopefully, for Rangers' sake and the Phillies' sake, this rest that he's going to get, he'll return to the rotation when they play in Minnesota, the weekend after they come back. Hopefully that gives him a break. But, yeah, I'm concerned about Ranger Suarez. I'm concerned about those innings, and I'm concerned about the back.
Mike, obviously 62 wins. They've been the best team in baseball. You hate to look at the negative here, which, it's what sports are. Everybody wants perfection. What is something, that you see 62-34, they're 3.5 games better than everybody else. They're 8.5 up in the division. But if something was the bugaboo for them in the second half, what would it be?
I think it's injuries. You look at Ranger Suarez, you look at Zach Wheeler, you look at JT Realmuto, Harper, Schwarber, Turner. They've all spent time on the injured list so far this year. I think that the only thing that holds this team back is injuries. I think if they get to October healthy, they can play. Obviously, they can play with any team in baseball, and they are built to win a World Series this year. Absolutely. But the only thing that can stop them is injuries, and they have battled these injuries so far this season. Now, so is everybody else. I mean, the Dodgers are an injury mess. Their rotation is an injury mess. They're probably going to be a different team. The Braves have had injuries, right? Acuna's gone for the season. A bunch of other guys are also hurt. But the only thing that would really worry me about the Phillies right now is the injuries, and in particular the injuries to the starting pitching. That's what really sets this team apart. So when I hear that Zach Wheeler's got a little bit of a back issue and they skipped his start yesterday, and when I hear that Ranger Suarez has a little bit of a back issue and now he's not pitching in the All-Star game and now he's going to be pitching, his start coming out of the break is going to be pushed back, that gives me pause and makes me worry a little bit.
Yes, you take a look at the injuries. You can't legislate them. You never know what's going to happen in those situations. But if the Phillies don't make a big move, is this team as constructed good enough to – I mean, yes, they can win a World Series, but would you make them the favorite?
That's a tough question right now. Yeah, the favorite in the National League to get to the World Series, absolutely. If you're going to match up with, the Cleveland Guardians, you're going to match up with the Baltimore Orioles, you're going to match up with the New York Yankees, we'll see what's going on there. But, right now, definitely the favorite to get to the National League. But, Mike, I would expect them to make a big move. They are all in. This is a team built to win right now. I would expect them to go get bullpen help. I would expect them to get that right-handed bat. If they didn't make 1 or 2 or 3 moves before the trading deadline, I would be disappointed. And knowing Dave Dombrowski's history, I think they're going to be active at the trade deadline. This is a team built to win now. This is a team with an 8.5-game lead in the National League East, the best record in baseball. You don't find yourself in this situation that often, and when you are, you got to do everything you can to win.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Of course, by the way, Saturday, Tyler Phillips was the pitcher there. You got a chance to catch up with him. How cool of a moment was that for him to be able to be the one guy who did win a game this weekend, but to do it at Citizens Bank Park for him?
Yeah, absolutely. You felt great for him. I thought the Phillies handled it great. At Bryce Harper's suggestion, they sort of held back. They sort of let him take the field for the top of the first inning by himself. And just think about it. Here's a kid who grew up a Phillies fan, and he gets to leave the mound at Citizens Bank Park to a standing ovation. He gets a win in his first start. He's a great guy to talk to out of Bishop Eustace. And, Mike, you're around a lot of athletes, too. A lot of athletes aren't fans, right? They're not fans like we're fans, right? A lot of very good high school baseball players, college baseball players, they kind of focus on themselves, understandably, and they're not really great fans. But here's a guy who grew up a Phillies fan, pitched at Bishop Eustace, right on the other side of the Delaware River from Philadelphia, and it was absolutely very exciting and happy for him the way he performed on Saturday. Just a great story there. And, good to see him get that win.
Yeah, he was the one guy who did have a good day on the mound for the Phillies. Not too many pitching performances were memorable this weekend. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Mike, we'll talk to you Wednesday, pal.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thank you.
All right, Mike McGarry, everybody. Make sure you check him out at Press of Atlantic City and right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. The All-Star lineup has been announced, and we'll have that for you coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. Use the hashtag SBLive. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Coming up, I got the All-Star game lineup for you. And then in the 3 o'clock hour, I want to turn our attention to the NFL Jalen Hurts top 10 quarterback list. Where did he appear on that list? Well, you might be surprised at where he landed on the list. That's coming up at 3. When we come back, where did Trey Turner, where did Bryce Harper, and where did Alec Bohm all appear on the National League lineup card? You'll hear that next. Right here on the Sports Bash.
Drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord, your fun-to-drive weekend getaway vehicles. From Honda, the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 2.9% APR on a 2025 CR-V or 2024 Accord.
See, dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
2:49 Sports Bash. Bob Wankel will talk some Phils coming up in 11 minutes. He was at the game yesterday. He was miserable. Just hot, nasty. And the Phillies were terrible. The All-Star lineups are out. Have you seen them, Josh? Have you seen the lineup yet?
I have not seen the lineup yet.
You want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, sure. I'll probably fail at it.
Okay.
Just making expectations as low as possible here. Yeah.
I was a little surprised with it.
So I'm going to assume Ohtani's leading off.
Well, I don't know if you live under a rock half the time or what. This was announced days ago that Marte was leading off. I mean, you're a good sports guy. I mean, the Marte decision was announced by his manager. He came out and said that Marte was going to lead off.
I missed that.
I mean,
it's a bad job by me.
Terrible job.
Okay, so Marte's leading
you are
off.
way more ingrained in sports like day to day than I am. Like literally more. How did I know that?
Bad job by me.
Bad job.
Bad job.
Marte was announced as the leadoff guy. This happened. Well, whenever they announced it, Skeens was the starting pitcher.
So that was, what was that, Friday, Thursday?
Whatever day, yeah. So it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Marte's been the leadoff hitter for days now, yes.
It's been a while since I hold my head up high, so.
Yeah. You can hold your head up high on this one, but I'm surprised you didn't say, I saw this everywhere.
So if Marte's leading off.
Yep.
Well, that's interesting then, because, would Turner be 2 then?
No, he is not 2.
Okay.
No, you did say that one guy would be leading off, and I told you he's not leading off, so he would be hitting?
Number 2.
Ohtani.
So Ohtani's 2.
Yes. Marte, Ohtani.
Ozuna? Ozuna's not a starter.
Ozuna's not in the starting lineup.
Okay, never mind.
It'd be really hard for him to hit in that spot.
Well, you know. I mean, would they really go 3 lefties in a row? I mean, could it be Harper at 3?
Could be. I mean,
I'm going to go Harper at 3.
Harper's hitting 4.
Harper's hitting 4?
Yep.
So there's someone in between Harper and Ohtani.
Yep.
So who would be between Harper and Ohtani? Would the guy between Harper and Ohtani be Profar?
He's hitting 9th.
Never mind.
You put Profar in the 3-hole.
Why not?
I mean, he's lucky to be on this team, let alone hitting 3rd.
Listen, I told you. I'm going to.
Yeah, I don't want you making my lineup for me.
At least up for the All-Star game.
For any team.
This isn't my lineup. I'm trying to guess what they would have put. These lineups are always weird.
All right, it's Marte, Ohtani, Trey Turner,
okay,
Harper, Contreras, Yelich, Bohm, Hernandez, Profar. That's the lineup.
So they put Bohm deeper in the lineup.
He's hitting 7th.
Interesting. See, if I was to make the lineup, I would have had Bohm higher.
Well, I mean, I think that because...
Do you think they just didn't want to have multiple Phillies in a row?
No, I don't think that played a factor at all. I think because the manager is from Arizona, he wanted Marte to hit leadoff. So that moves Ohtani, who bats leadoff for the Dodgers, moves him out of the leadoff spot. I think in a perfect world, Ohtani probably hits in the leadoff spot. Then Trey Turner hits in the 2-hole. And then Harper hits in the 3-hole. And then, after that, the National League lineup's not all like, Contreras, Yelich, Bohm, Hernandez. They're not guys that jump. Even Hernandez would probably not be the pick of his own team to hit in that spot. He'd probably want Ozuna, and he would probably bat in the 4-hole had he been in the starting lineup, but he wasn't. So, yeah, I just don't think the National League starting lineup was conducive to make a great lineup out of. You got a lot of guys who were kind of
mixing and matching. Because
you would have had Ohtani hitting leadoff, Turner 2, Harper 3.
I can see Contreras still being 4 in that scenario.
He's hitting 5 here.
Right, but I'm saying if you moved everyone up 1, he would be 4. I could totally see it.
That's the All-Star lineup. Tomorrow night, you can listen to the All-Star game on 97.3 ESPN. There are now 8 Phillies. Actually, Suarez is out and Sanchez is in. He's replacing, although Max Fried is replacing Ranger Suarez. Who was Sanchez replacing?
Is he replacing Wheeler?
Oh, I don't know about that. I didn't see that Wheeler wasn't pitching. Is Wheeler not pitching in the game?
Let me check.
Bob Wankel, Red October, Philly Crossing Broad, coming up next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN. A lot cooler in here than it was in section 137 yesterday. Was not enjoyable. The game was not enjoyable. I got to tell you, though, Citizens Bank Park, there is like just so many food and drink options there. It is unbelievable how far that place has come. Now, the place was great when it opened. You could just order whatever you want there. It is nuts how many food and drink options are there. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, RedOctoberPhilly.com as the Phillies hit the All-Star break. 62 wins, best in baseball. But, man, this weekend was not indicative of the first half that they have. It goes all the way back to Friday night. Didn't have it Friday. And yesterday was maybe one of the least enjoyable sporting events I have ever been to in my life.
That's setting quite the stage here. It was a rough one. I covered the game yesterday. I was in the air conditioning in the press box, and it was still pretty miserable, Mike. So I don't know what it was like in section 137,
Awful.
But it could not have been good. I would have to agree with that.
It was not good.
It felt like yesterday to me, that game pretty early on. They had a light bullpen. They were down a few guys. They fall behind in the fourth, and it just sort of felt like the All-Star break began around 2:30 yesterday.
Yeah. People would forget, they actually had a lead in the game yesterday, and then it's 7-1. They did score 2 runs on that throw. They misses the cutoff man, and they end up scoring like a little league run there, and it's 7-3. You're feeling like maybe, and then home run derby. Let me ask you a couple quick things here. What was the decision to start Kerkering yesterday? When I got there and I saw he was pitching, why not start Mercado, see how many he can get? What was the reason for Kerkering?
I think that the idea is just that you look at how Michael Mercado came out and started the game against the Braves last time out, and he really struggled right from the jump. He got through the first inning, but his command was so bad that I think they wanted to kind of create some comfort for him and say, look, let's change the mentality. You're not going to prep like a starter, even though you're going to throw the bulk of innings. You're going to have that reliever mentality just to kind of give him a little bit of a different feel, see if they could get him through a few innings. And as we come to find out, it didn't really matter, but I think that was part of the thought process.
I would imagine that's the last we see of Michael Mercado.
I think that's probably the last you see of Michael Mercado, at least in the short term. I do think if there's a world where they say, you know what, we're going to stick with him for now, I think they have to change the way that they approach it. They're trying to get multiple innings out of him. Thought it was pretty clear that he was max effort, and by the third inning that he was out there, he got to the fifth, and he was totally cooked at that point. It was quite clear. So I think he's got a good arm. He's been productive both in spring training and minor leagues. If you want to stick it out with him, I think you have to turn him back into a single inning guy for the time being. But I am with you. I think that he's probably headed for a trip back down.
When you coached, did you see Tyler Phillips ever in person?
I did. So we played Bishop Eustace a couple times. We did not face him directly, but I saw him in 2015 in a non-public sectional game. It was Gloucester Catholic and Bishop Eustace, and he won 2-1. He beat Gloucester Catholic. They threw a guy named John Murphy that day who was like really highly touted, ended up at Maryland, but Phillips was just a little bit better than him. So, yeah.
Obviously he throws, well. He has the day where he strikes out a bunch of guys. I mean, was a guy who's been bouncing around, but is he a guy that can be something in the bullpen for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you get your guys back like Walker Turnbull, he gets bumped out of the rotation presumably, and can he stick around and be a multi-inning reliever, a long man of sorts, or a swing man? I think that maybe that is there. He's certainly shown some promise in these first 2 appearances, and he's going to get another crack at it in Pittsburgh. But you don't want to jump to conclusions one way or the other. He certainly looks like he belongs right now, but Is he long for key innings for this team? But probably not. But I do think that there could be a role for him here, especially with a guy like Mercado struggling. So, I mean, part of it is that you look at what Ruiz did yesterday. You look at what Dominguez is doing right now, it's a different story. He's in a different class, a different category, but it's not like all of these guys are just, firing at full cylinder right now. So, maybe there's a little bit more than that for him.
Yeah, no, and just because, as you hinted at the two guys, Turnbull and Walker, if they're out after the All-Star break, we know Turnbull will be. We'll see what happens with Walker. But is he a guy that they can keep throwing out there every fifth day in that number 5 spot? And if he performs, is he the guy that kind of goes to that bullpen? Speaking of the bullpen, Friday night you saw Mason Miller cracking the gun at 104. And obviously that just lights up everybody's eyes, but he's got a little attitude to him too. I mean, the umpire misses a call and he kind of gives the point, like, you missed that strike, give me the ball, I'll throw 104 so you catch this one maybe. But, when you watch him and obviously Rooker over the weekend, the fact that he hits 2 blasts yesterday, but he had an awesome weekend. You tweeted out, I think the asking price went up. That was after the first home run. After he hit another home run, I guess those are two guys you really, if you're Dave Dombrowski, have to consider.
Well, I think on the first piece, if they're going to add a bullpen arm, you would think it would be a difference maker because they have some high upside guys already. So if you're not going to go out and get a dude, I put that in air quotes there, but if you're not going to go get a dude, then what's even the point of adding to the bullpen mix? I think you need another. If you're going to invest in that, go get a guy that you really feel like is going to make a true difference. That being said, Miller's cost is going to be through the roof. I just don't know that the Phillies are going to entertain or participate in conversations with the cost that it would require from a prospect perspective to make that deal. With Brent Rooker, you see the weekend that he had, and he's a really nice hitter, and he's having a very good season. The problem there is that he has not played a defensive inning since May 30th. Think about this. This is an A's team that is going to clearly sell, probably would like to drive up the value of Brent Rooker, and they're not putting him out there defensively. What does that say to you? He's played 14 games all season defensively, 5 in right field and 9 in left. And I just don't know if the Phillies want to trade for a DH type that's basically only going to platoon. And by the way, again, what's that going to cost? Because it's probably going to be pretty steep. So both would be great additions, but I just don't know if those are the guys for the Phillies. Well,
that's the question. Would you, is Dave Dombrowski willing to sacrifice some defense to get that right-handed bat and play him 6 or 7 innings and then replace him?
I don't think they want to do that. I think they would rather not go back down that road where they were at with Kyle Schwarber, where you were sacrificing defense to get the offense on the field. And I think that they would have liked to have turned the page on the defensive liability in left field. Now, that being said, we'll see what happens with the market. If there's no better option and they're that desperate to get the offense, maybe then they would be a little bit more willing to deal with it, and maybe they stick Brent Rooker out there if they wanted to make that deal and kind of let him just hope that he catches the ones that are hit to him. But I don't think it's an ideal fit. But if he's going to hit like that, fine.
Well, because I would ask you then, Bob, if you had that bat in your lineup, where's he hitting on this team? 4, 5?
I suppose he probably protects Harper. So I would say 4, and then you can slot Bohm back. I know Bohm's been a doubles machine. He's on pace for 56 doubles this season. I wrote yesterday, he's only 3 off. His pacing is 3 off the franchise record for doubles in a season set by Chuck Klein back in 1930. So I'm not chomping at the bit to get Alec Bohm out of the 4-hole, as productive as he's been, but yeah, man, that would really lengthen this thing out a little bit.
Yeah, you put Rooker, I was saying this in the first hour, you put him in the 4-hole, you put Bohm in the 5-hole, and then when Real Muto's back, you probably can hit him 6 or Stott 6. Now, I know you wrote about Stott and Castellanos, and we can get into that a little bit here, but you put Real Muto in the 6th spot, Bohm, Stott 7. I mean, Castellanos 7 or 8. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking about a pretty deep lineup. You're hitting Stott 5 right now.
Yeah, they got to get Stott out of the middle of the lineup. I mean, there's just like no other way to say it. I mean, I am still high on Bryson Stott. I think that he's a quality hitter. I acknowledge that his walk rate has more than doubled this season. He's been more patient, more selective. I think maybe at the expense of some of his hit skill. But you cannot, with the way that Bryson Stott's going right now, continue to hit him 5th or 6th in a lineup and expect to be productive and consistent every single night.
Well, where do you put Real Muto? Where do you put? He's supposed to come back in Minnesota. Where do you put him in?
I think that Real Muto probably slots back to 5.
Because he started the season hitting 4, then he went to 2 when Turner went out. So we really haven't seen where he's going to end up in the new configuration with Bohm kind of handling 4 and Turner back. So Real Muto really hasn't had a spot with the lineup as constructed.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that they would go Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm, Real Muto, probably Stott 6th, and then Castellanos 7th, and then whatever you want to do. And then Brandon Marsh is in the lineup. Maybe Marsh comes in and hits 6th. But I mean, Bryson Stott, I wrote this. He, right now, since May 19th, of all qualified Major League second basemen, has the second worst batting average of any qualified second baseman from that time period. We're talking about almost 2 months. His OPS is 20th out of 21 qualified second baseman. I mean, we're getting to a point now where I have a lot of faith in the player. I like the guy. I think that he's going to be a good player when it's all said and done. But he's going through it right now, and they gotta get him out of the middle of that lineup.
Why do you feel that he has struggled so much? Is there anything that stands out? Because this was a guy that seemingly the arrow was pointing up. He looked like a confident player last year. Hits that grand slam, of course, in the playoff game, hitting in the 5-hole primarily from what I recall. Last year at playoffs, he was pretty much the 5 spot on this. What has happened that you're right? I mean, some of the numbers are glaring.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we're at the All-Star break here. He walked 39 times last season. He already has 40 walks this season, so I give him credit for that. I mean, he really is basically on pace to double his walks year over year. A little bit less than that now. He's not walking as much these past couple of weeks as he was, but for a time, he was essentially on pace to double his walk rate. Good. You know, that shows development. That shows progress, more selectivity, better eye. I think, though, in doing so, seeing more pitches, running counts deeper, what has happened is you do sacrifice a little bit of aggressiveness. You know, one thing I'll say is that progress is not always linear. You see a young player have some success and you expect them to just build on it. But sometimes they take a step back. Sometimes they take 2 steps back before the light goes on and you get the finished product. And I think with Bryson Stott right now, you're seeing a guy that's cognizant of wanting to see more pitches, draw more walks so that he can kind of profile more as an on-base guy, top of the order guy. But in doing so, I think some of that aggressiveness has led to his struggles. And, you know, I think that when it's all said and done, he puts it all together, but he's going through it right now. And that's what I see.
He's going through it. What about Castellanos? Is he going the opposite? Do we feel better that he has turned a corner? I don't know that anyone's ever going to be like, hey, I trust that guy or I feel confident in that guy. But has he been giving you better at bats?
Well, he has. And I mean, it's not always pretty. And it wasn't pretty yesterday. And that's the thing.
It wasn't.
You say, I don't think people will ever trust him. I hear you on that. I mean, you know, what happened in the postseason last year at the end, the way that this year started, I mean, I think that there's a lot of ugly at-bats. There's a lot of at-bats where they feel a little bit non-competitive. But at the same time, if you go back to that May 19th, which is the date that I circled in the story, you're talking about a guy who's had an OPS in the high 700s. He's been pretty productive since then. I mean, he's slashing 272, 318, and 504 since the third week of May. I mean, that's pretty good. You would take that over the course of 162. You'd say, like, all right, this guy's basically going to have an 800 OPS, hit about 25 homers. I'll sign up for that. That start was so bad, though, that it just deflates his overall numbers.
Yeah. Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com is the newsletter. Crossing Broad, of course, check out all the Phillies coverage over there. Phillies at the All-Star break, so much to kind of look at. As you saw Rooker in town this weekend, he hits the 2 homers, Miller the other night. Obviously, the trade stuff is going to continue to be, they got 15 days to make a decision here on what they want to do. You said Friday, this team right now, as constructed, probably not good enough to win. I mean, yeah, could they do it? Sure. But they probably need to do something else. But I want to throw into, how worried are you about the pitching? Suarez and all that, some of these little minor back stuff is not good, but hearing the injury stuff, and as good as they were in the first half of the season, to have to try to replicate or come close to that.
Yeah, I think that the last start by Ranger Suarez was a little bit concerning. You know, guys are not going to be sharp every time out. They're going to hit little 2-3 start runs where they don't have everything firing. But, I mean, yeah, the velocity is a concern. The velocity was down. He's a guy that doesn't throw all that hard to begin with, so it really does matter. You know, when you're firing away at 89, 90, like that's not a great sign for Ranger Suarez. I thought that some of the command was not as crisp as it usually is. So yeah, you're looking at a stretch now for about a month, maybe a little shy of a month, where he has not been great. And you know, you hear that he's got some back issues going on, and they're going to give him some extended rest here. So you won't see him in Pittsburgh. You won't see him until the Minnesota series. So you hope that extended time off, the All-Star break, allows them to realign the rotation, and that he kind of comes back and is the guy that you saw for the bulk of the first half. I'm not personally concerned about Zach Wheeler. I feel very good about Aaron Nola. And it's hard not to feel good about Christopher Sanchez still. I know everybody's like waiting for the other shoe to drop or waiting for that regression with him. But every time that he has struggled this season, he's come back and he's been fantastic in the follow-up start. And I think there's something to be said for that. So I feel overall pretty good about it. But they certainly need to – I mean, Ranger Suarez is sort of the key. He's the guy that you're like, hey, we have 3 aces. You know, we have 3 guys that we feel like can shut you down from the first pitch to the final pitch every time they take the ball. And right now, he's not that guy. So there's got to be a little bit of worry that's crept in there. But I think overall, the Phillies are still in a really good spot. I still would not be surprised, though, if they added another starter. I know that sounds crazy, especially with Turnbull and Walker looming, but there's enough, and I may have said this last week, I apologize if this is redundant, but I think there is enough uncertainty in the back part of the rotation with these back issues and workload issues that it wouldn't be a terrible idea to go out and try to find another number 5 type starter who can fill innings, and if you want to go to a 6-man rotation, would allow you to do that.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions that still need to be answered. If you could pick Rooker or Miller, which one would you take?
I would take Miller. I just think what you do then is you effectively end the game. You effectively end the game after the 5th inning. Like if your starting pitching, which is so good, continues to be so good, and you get that bullpen a lead with the Hoffmans and the Stroms, and even the Kirkerings of the world, and then you can back that up with Miller. I mean, those are 4 innings where the opponent says, oh man, we really have an uphill battle here.
It's like what was that, the 15 Royals? I mean, you got to their bullpen and the game was over.
Yeah.
We're comparing the Phillies to the Royals, though. How about that?
That's one of the things, though, that's interesting, right? Like when you look at that A's team, they're not very good. They're 25 games under 500, but when they get a lead late, they have a pretty decent setup guy, and then Miller. That's tough.
Yeah, no, their bullpen is pretty solid. They got a couple interesting guys back there, but Miller, the exorbitant amount that you would have to give up to get one or both of those guys. You're probably thinking, if you're Dave Dombrowski, I just don't know that I'm willing to do that for a guy that just defensively is a nothing burger.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
They have a lot of decisions to make here. I would be, if you gave me the over-under of 2.5 moves, I would take the over. I think that they're going to make 3 moves, and I think one is going to be one of significance where you say, wow, okay, great. But to predict that is very difficult, and I don't want to dodge the question or dodge the projection, but so much of it will be predicated upon who becomes available, how willing are the other side of the deal, how willing are they to be to part ways, what are their asks. I think that the Phillies will be opportunistic and go to where the value is.
All right, here's a question for you then, all right? Is there a guy that's in the regular lineup, platoon, and or the rotation that they use to trade? Or is the trade that they make coming from prospects?
I don't think that they will trade a guy that is in the normal lineup or, we'll call him a platoon piece like Brandon Marsh. I think you can make an argument for it.
Like the guys who would not be traded, period, would be probably Real Muto, Harper, Turner, Schwarber. I would imagine Bohm.
I mean, you're not trading out, but this team is on pace to win over 100 games. I just don't see them coming in and doing, if you had an underachieving team, let's say that you had a few all-stars and you like these guys, but the Phillies, we're only 6 games over 500 right now. Maybe the conversation would be, maybe they make another second half run. They've made some deep postseason runs the past couple of years, but maybe this team just isn't good enough. So let's do something that's going to hurt a little bit to get to where we want to go. And maybe you would trade one of these core guys. I just don't think that you're taking a team that's on pace to win over 100 games and has the chemistry that they do and subtracting from it. But could you make an argument, and I have previously, about a Bryson Stott or a Brandon Marsh? Those guys would be of interest to another team, even a rebuilding team that wants a younger player that's under control, that is major league ready and isn't a total project or a total projection. But I just can't see the Phillies doing that.
All right, Phil, start the second half this weekend. And, of course, the All-Star game tomorrow. You got 3 starters. You got Turner hitting 3rd, Harper hitting 4th, and Alec Bohm hitting 7th tomorrow night in the All-Star lineup. And Alec Bohm will participate in the Home Run Derby tonight. You can listen to the All-Star game and the Derby right here on 97.3 ESPN. Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com is the newsletter. And don't forget all their coverage over at Crossing Broad. All right, man. It was a hot one yesterday. It was a hot one yesterday.
Hydrate.
Thank you, man. Bob Wankel, everybody, here on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive to find us. And, of course, we got plenty more coming up, including the executives all around football. They've been putting out their list of all the different positions. They did running back and wide receiver and offensive line and yada, yada, yada. They did the quarterbacks were today. Where did Jalen Hurts land on that list? Find out next on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Hey, don't forget, Happy Hour Friday, July 26th. It's going to be the first of our stops on Friday, celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We're going to be live at Giuliano's Pub and Grill, 2264 Ocean Heights Avenue, Egg Harbor Township. Stop out, have a beer with the show, and enter to win tickets to see Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day at Citizens Bank Park. That show is on August 9th. It's $3.50 Bud Light Draft, $4 neutral vodka seltzers, and the Sports Bash Live Friday, July 26th at Giuliano's Pub and Grill in Egg Harbor Township, celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We're heading out on select Happy Hour Fridays throughout the rest of the summer, and the first one is July the 26th. You're all invited to stop out to celebrate 15 years of the show. We'll have a couple of nice cold ones. We'll watch the Phillies game afterwards, and we'll give away Green Day Smashing Pumpkins tickets. It's all July 26th, Giuliano's Pub and Grill, EHT.
It's this.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
With Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Nick Sirianni's attack with Philly last year was just not very good. I mean, they were in a situation where they kind of rolled the ball out, tried to do what they did the year before. Teams adjusted. Eagles didn't evolve, so Hurts was in a position where he just wasn't highlighted. I will point out that a lot of voters say, even though he's very good, he's never really going to be a top 5 quarterback in the eyes of a lot of evaluators. They say he's sort of in that 7 to 13 range, depending on how he does that year.
Jeremy Fowler talking about why Jalen Hurts wasn't in the top 10 on executive scouts coaches list of the top 10 quarterbacks entering the 2024 season. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. You know, all these lists are very subjective, obviously.
Right.
Is Jalen Hurts one of the top 10 talents? I don't have a problem with Hurts not being on the list, to be honest with you. I mean, it doesn't, appalled me that people watched his game and said he's not a top 10 player in the league.
I don't think it should appall you, but I think that the reasoning definitely opens up questions for just general quarterback evaluations, because you heard Jeremy Fowler say there that league people were saying he didn't perform well in the offense. The offense didn't help him much last year. So if the offense is really what impacted Jalen Hurts' productivity, and it wasn't Hurts specifically, then are we really judging Hurts, or are we judging the Eagles' offense in this case?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, the Eagles' offense has a ton of talent. So when you look at the talent they have and say, why was the quarterback a step back from where he was the year before with all the talent around, you would say, hey, any Joe Schmo should be able to walk into that offense with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and that offensive line and be productive. So I think a lot of people already look at Jalen Hurts and say that he is elevated by the offense that he has around him. Does he elevate them, or do they elevate him?
Well, according to, I'm reading from the ESPN Plus article, a high-ranking NFL team official told Jeremy Fowler that, quote, the Eagles' offense became stale as a whole, and the predictable offensive attack affected Hurts' stock. So there, it sounds more like the criticism is about the Eagles, how he was in the offense, and less about just him as the individual player, which is interesting.
Yeah, because the way I look at it is the year that he did not have a lot of talent, he was just an average player.
Correct.
Let's be honest. And then they got A.J. Brown, and then he went to an MVP candidate. This is akin to when Donovan McNabb had average talent. He was good, but then when they got Terrell Owens, he was an MVP level good. Similar to Jalen Hurts. He was just an okay quarterback, and then they got A.J. Brown, and then he went to an MVP level quarterback. So then why did he take a step back from being an MVP level quarterback to last year?
And that gets to the other point that Jeremy Fowler made about executives said that there was that injury that Hurts dealt with that definitely dropped him in a lot of people's perception of him.
Jalen Hurts did not look right last year. The Eagles could downplay whatever knee issues he was dealing with in season. Wasn't even really on the injury report in some cases, but they felt like he just wasn't moving the same. Couldn't do that dual threat ability that he's so good at with the offense.
That whole thing is mesmerizing to me. What happened at the end of the year? We never heard anything followed up on injuries to him. We never heard about him getting any surgery or anything done. Yeah. What were the injuries and how did they affect him?
And you heard him deal. It was like an unspoken injury. It was like, Eagles could try to downplay it all they want, but everybody knew. I mean, it was literally an NFC executive said Hurts, quote, Hurts was playing hurt. The Eagles tried to downplay that, but he never looked right. He wasn't the same runner in the pass, and passing the ball was tough for him, unquote.
I mean, for him not to be on the injury report is a little baffling as well.
Right. I mean, you saw Tom Brady was on the injury report for years. He played every week. The Eagles weren't at least trying to be transparent about, hey, this guy might not be 100%.
So let me look at this list here. I've not really seen the list or studied it much.
Yep.
Dak Prescott, 10. Goff, 9. Rodgers, 8. Stroud, 7. Herbert, 6. Stafford, 5. Lamar Jackson, 4. Josh Allen, 3. Joe Burrow, 2. And Patrick Mahomes, 1. There's really not a quarterback on that list that I'm like, that's egregious. I mean, really, the only one that I would say is maybe Jared Goff at number 9. That, okay, there might be someone else in the league that I'd rather have than Jared Goff, but I don't know that it definitively sticks out. Like, I don't know, would I rather have Trevor Lawrence? Maybe. Would I rather have... Who didn't make the list? Brock Purdy would be a guy that I think I would...
Brock Purdy was an honorable mention.
I probably like Purdy better than I like Goff.
There were 3 quarterbacks who received honorable mentions because they didn't make the top 10. It was Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, and Tua Tagovailoa.
I mean, Kirk Cousins didn't make it. You can make an argument that he's been better than some of these guys. But hasn't won. Goff has been to a Super Bowl. He's been to an NFC championship game. Other than that, I don't really think there's a guy that egregiously, I mean, Jordan Love, if you're going to put C.J. Stroud on the list, does Jordan Love deserve to be on that list too? Probably. Like if you said Love was number 9 and Goff was not on the list, I think I'd be cool with that.
So there were two people who put Jordan Love on their lists, but not enough put him on the list to add up to the accumulative to get in the top 10. Because they interviewed over 80 people around the league.
Yeah, that would be it. Like Mahomes, obviously, Burrow, they would be my top 2. Josh Allen 3, Lamar Jackson 4.
I think Josh Allen's way too high.
Okay, but I don't really have a guy that like I would be fighting for to be ahead of him. I just think right now you got a lot of young guys that don't have the resumes that need to prove more before they make that. Like Matthew Stafford being number 5 to me. Like I've never been a big Stafford guy. He kind of shut everybody up when he won that Super Bowl. But if he's the 5th best guy in the whole league right now, I think that kind of says that the league has a little bit of a drop off at that position.
So one high-ranking NFL team official said about Matthew Stafford, quote, "He elevates the plays of those around him. Puka Nacua is a good player, but he's not the same guy without Stafford. He helps those guys reach their potential," unquote.
Okay, I mean, listen, like I said, would I rather Stafford or Herbert? Half a dozen, one or the other. Herbert and Stafford seem duplicitous to me. Herbert's a guy that has a ton of talent and hasn't won a whole heck of a lot. Stafford was a guy who had a ton of talent and didn't win a whole heck of a lot in Detroit. He went to L.A., he ends up winning that Super Bowl. I don't know, is Justin Herbert going to win a Super Bowl? Is it going to take him getting traded to some other place before he finally does that? Or is he good enough to elevate the team? He's had a lot of really good players around him. Now, they've had a ton of injury issues.
They have, and now he's got Harbaugh and a new GM. They've overhauled the entire organization, so maybe having a better organization. We saw what Harbaugh did for guys like Alex Smith's career.
And remember, he's very young in his, journey of quarterback.
26 years old.
Yeah, he's probably got another 10 years to play at a pretty high level. C.J. Stroud has only done it 1 year, and they have him ahead of Aaron Rodgers, for God's sakes. But Aaron Rodgers also is 40-plus years old. He hasn't played in a year because of a major, major injury. He's 8th on this list for a couple of reasons. One, there is a lack of quarterback talent in this league, and 2, based on his history, you're just assuming he's going to go back out there and be Aaron Rodgers again. I don't have a problem with that because I don't really have anybody to replace him.
So one AFC executive said about Aaron Rodgers, he's probably a fringe top 10 quarterback at this point, but he still has that rare ability to throw the football, and that hasn't gone away. I think he's got a major opportunity to lift the Jets and show what he can still do, unquote.
Yeah, I mean, listen, is anybody going to be surprised if he goes out there and is awesome again? No. Is anybody going to be surprised if he goes out there and takes a huge step back? I think he'd be more surprised by that than him being awesome, right?
Absolutely.
So that's why I don't have really a big problem with him being in this spot. And again, am I taking Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, Aaron Rodgers.
Right. I mean, if these are the guys you're kind of debating between, I'll put Rodgers on my list ahead of. Now, Jordan Love would be the one guy, like, I don't even think, like, I look at this list of 10 and say, I don't think Jalen Hurts I'd take over any of these guys.
So you asked about Goff.
Now, if I had Jalen Hurts from 2 years ago, again, last year, then he has to be on this list.
Right. Then it's a little different, the conversation.
And that's why I've always said the Eagles were in a terrible spot. The 1 year he was an average quarterback. Then he went to an MVP candidate. You had to make a decision on who he is after the MVP candidate year. Well, you had to sign him to that deal based on the MVP candidate year. The Eagles couldn't go to him and say, well, you had 1 year where you were average and another year where you were elite. Right. We're going to pay you to be very good. Well, last year, you could make an argument that he was good, very good, not elite.
Not elite.
But you paid him based on the elite season. This is where his deal came up and the whole situation really put the Eagles in a tough spot. They had to make a decision. Are you the elite player or are you the average player? Well, obviously they couldn't approach him and say, we think you're the average player. So they had to pay him to be the elite player. Well, if you're not the elite player, but you got paid to be the elite player, that becomes an issue possibly down the road.
And the other thing with Hurts is really quick, that deal is starting to look better and better as it goes along because the Eagles signed him when they did. He's being shoved further and further down those quarterback paid rankings. So, at the time we were like, whoa, this is a big number. But now you look back on it and you realize, well, he's being paid a lot less than a lot of guys right now. So at the end of the day, it's at least not going to be as egregious as it could have been.
No, but it'll always, that first impression was that he signed the biggest quarterback deal ever. No one cares that other people got paid more after that. It was at one point you were looked at to be the highest paid quarterback in the league, and you're not performing at that level.
But again, the evaluators say, well, it wasn't Hurts. It was the offense around him. The offense was stale.
I have a hard time with that, though. I mean, come on. It's the offense around him, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, the best offensive line in football. What are we talking about here? Those guys stink?
So then why are they criticizing what was around him instead of criticizing him specifically?
I have no answer for that one. I don't know how anybody who evaluates football can make that assertion. I mean, with the talent they have, nobody in that offense would you say we need an upgrade?
No.
So, I mean, how can I take that reasoning?
Well, then
now,
it goes.
You could say the offensive play caller was a problem and they changed it.
That's what I was going to say. So is it as simple as, hey, the reason why there was a problem last year was because of the play calls that were being made, and now that he has a better play caller, now it won't be quote-unquote stale anymore.
Yeah, but you know what? Even with that, you got players of that talent, you should be successful.
You should.
Yeah, I mean, even if you are just dumbing it down, being basic as possible, just by having those guys on the field, simple pitches and catches. Hey, give me a 5-yard out and see what you do after the catch is made. Now, you might say, this isn't an explosive offense, but you should be able to move the ball with some level of success.
I mean, they were still top 10 in the NFL in points scored.
Most of that was built from the first 10, 11 games of the season.
That's true. Mm-hmm. But you think about it, football history is full of examples of not every coach is able to maximize the talent on the field.
Well, the whole thing, like Fowler said that Sirianni didn't highlight Hurts last year and the injury stuff, he wasn't on the injury list and all that jazz. I have to wonder, because the player that he was the year before, we used to talk about this all the time. 2 years ago, he made the right decision on the RPO 99% of the time.
Right.
I mean, if it was hand it off, he handed it off. It was pull it and keep it yourself, he pulled it and kept it himself. If it was pull it and hit the guy over the middle, he made the right decision every time. And I think the lack of him in the running game made his decisions in the RPO more of a 50-50 proposition than a 90-10. And that's why I think he was so good the year before, is that he always made the right decision. And because one of the decisions was him running the ball. I think last year, one of the decisions was taken away, and that was him running the ball. That element was not a part of the offense last year.
Well, that gets back to what the AFC scout said. He explained that he says where Hurts will be ranked is, quote, depending on how productive he is each year. So what we're basically saying is,
unless you show consistency,
right? Maybe back-to-back years.
Yeah.
The same numbers.
If he did what he did 2 years ago last year, so he had 2 years in a row where he was in the MVP conversation. Now he's on this list. I mean, Joe Burrow. That's why he's on this list. Joe Burrow isn't he in the same draft class as Hurts?
Yeah, Burrow was number 1.
Right, he was the number 1 pick that year. But I'm saying, so they both have been in the league the same amount of years. But Burrow's consistency is why he's number 2. Herbert's consistency is why he's number 6. The lack of wins is why Herbert's not higher on this list. Because talent-wise, he's probably, I guess Josh Allen, same thing.
Well, the AFC scout they talked to for this article says, quote, about Burrow, high level in all areas, can't stay healthy.
For who?
For Burrow.
Yeah, Burrow's had the injury issues constantly. Constant injury issues for him. 609-403-0973. Cole from LBI says, Hurts wasn't hurt, but he was beat up, and that's why I say mobile quarterbacks are overrated in the sense that when you get tired at the end of a game or beat up at the end of the season, you need a quarterback that can beat you with his arm without the RPO threat. Sure. I mean, yeah, I think there was a lot of these guys are dangerous because they add an element. If you take that element away from them, they're not as dangerous. That's not a surprise.
Well, I don't think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are top 5 quarterbacks if they didn't have the running ability.
Yeah, it's like I just watched Dynasty I'm not finished it yet, but I'm like almost through. And one of the things, like the year that Matt Castle took over for Brady, they said like one thing that he could do that Brady couldn't was move a little bit, and like they were kind of like showing highlights on the sideline of like Randy Moss, like, oh, Castle can move. That's, Tommy can't do that. That doesn't mean he's better than Tom Brady. He just adds an element,
right?
And it helped them win 11 games that year, by the way.
It did, and I think that saying that you have to put the running and the throwing together for these guys, because in today's game, unless your name is Matthew Stafford, you've been injured a million times. Most of these guys are mobile. Even Aaron Rodgers has been known to be mobile.
Oh, Aaron Rodgers is that's one of the reasons why he's so great. He's not a runner, but he can improvise and he can escape, his escapability. He has the intuition. Intuition is something you can't teach. And guys who have it are on another level.
Right.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. I'm Mike Gill. Coming up, football at 4 in 14 minutes from now. We'll get Jeff Mosher into the conversation. Does he think Jalen Hurts deserves to be on this list of the top 10? Is he proven that he's a top 10 quarterback in this league? And if not, what does he need to improve on? That's coming up. Plus, we have betting odds on Saquon Barkley this year. That's coming up next here on the Sports Bash.
You're listening to the
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals. That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
With Mike Gill.
And it just keeps getting better.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Don't forget, Home Run Derby tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Alec Bohm. He is the long shot. Let's look at the odds on our website, 97.3ESPN.com. Coverage starts at 8 o'clock. Hey, it's Mike Gill with another amazing opportunity for you at Key Acura of Atlantic City. Rocco tells me that all 2024 MDXs in stock have to go this month. So they're priced to move. You can drive off the lot with the 2024 MDX all-wheel drive technology package for just $499 a month for 36 months with $49.95 down. That's right. $499 a month on a low-mileage lease for current Acura owners. There are only a few left. Get there now. Key Acura, Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. It's the car I've been driving up to the Phils game yesterday. Man, what a nice, comfortable ride up the expressway to get to that game. Now, when I got to the game, it was bumpy. The game was awful yesterday. The only guy who showed up, Alec Bohm, couple doubles. Trey Turner, a couple hit the home run, couple of hits in the game. The Phillies had 4 hits yesterday. Those two had all 4 of the hits for the Phillies. Thankfully, the All-Star break is here, and the Home Run Derby is tonight on 97.3 ESPN. The All-Star game is tomorrow. And then, look, this is always a rough time because after the All-Star game, you get a couple of days off. The Phillies don't return back until Friday. They'll play Pittsburgh at PNC Park. I don't know if the teams, let's see, have the Pirates and the Phillies put out their rotations yet for the second half. I know the Phillies have kind of hinted at Aaron Nola, I think, is going to pitch the first game for the Phillies. I'm pretty sure Nola's going for the Phillies. But with Paul Skeens pitching the All-Star game tonight, we'll see if he appears Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. But the Phillies, tough Pittsburgh pitching. Minnesota, one of the best teams in baseball. Then Cleveland, the second best team in baseball. Then the Yankees, really good team. Then Seattle, first place in the West. Then the Dodgers out on the road. They're at Seattle, at the Dodgers, at Arizona for 4. It's a pretty brutal schedule with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, potentially 7 straight series, I should say, against potential playoff opponents for the Phillies coming out of the All-Star break. Start to turn up the heat, baby. Speaking of turning it up, we're going to go football at 4 next with Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast here on the Sports Bash.
97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. It's the fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Executives point out to me that Jalen Hurts did not look right last year. The Eagles could downplay whatever knee issues he was dealing with in season. Wasn't even really on the injury report in some cases, but they felt like he just wasn't moving the same. Couldn't do that dual threat ability that he's so good at with the offense. And then Nick Sirianni's attack with Philly last year was just not very good. I mean, they were in a situation where they kind of rolled the ball out, tried to do what they did the year before. Teams adjusted. Eagles didn't evolve, so Hurts was in a position where he just wasn't highlighted.
ESPN's Jeremy Fowler on why Jalen Hurts was not ranked among the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Is it an egregious leave off the list, or does it sound about right? We're getting ready for Eagles training camp. July 23rd is when they report. Jeff Mosher, Football at 4, host of the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms, is here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. You know, Moshe, Hurts is a really interesting guy. He came out of nowhere to be an MVP candidate. He took a step back last year. I don't think any of us can debate that. But the whole point as to why, what did we see from Hurts? And to the point now, is he overlooked as one of the better players here, or is he back to like just middle of the pack and that's where he is and that's okay?
Well, there's a little bit of all that, Mike. Good to talk to you today. I would say, so I remember last year, right? These top 10 lists can be very sort of annoying, deceiving, and meant for debate that only lasts a certain amount of time. If we go back to last year, I remember seeing Jalen Hurts like top 3 on people. It was almost like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. And then, you know, you forget that a year later you're going to be doing it all. You know, Lamar Jackson had fallen off and now he was MVP again. And I kept looking at people's top 10 lists last year at this time, and I was laughing because you're not seeing Matthew Stafford on anybody's list because the Rams 2 years ago had a rough season. He was hurt. Everybody thought he was cooked and washed up and done. And, you know, Matthew Stafford is, in my eyes, has never not been a top 10 quarterback in the league. I think when he's healthy and playing, he's great. But that's the way these top 10 lists always go. They're almost what have you done last year instead of what have you done for the entirety of your career. So I don't put too much into wherever Jalen Hurts is or isn't on a top 10 list. He's clearly a quarterback who's got really good capabilities. I think he's someone, though, who if he's not in the right environment, if things aren't going well like they weren't last year, if you're in an offense that's predictable like last year's got, it's going to impact his play. If he has an injury, which we saw last year with his, I believe it was his knee, right, where he's not running the same way and he's not as dynamic, that's going to impact his play because, Mike, to me, he's one of those quarterbacks that hasn't yet reached a level, and he may not, where it doesn't matter what your environment is. It doesn't matter whether you got a little nagging injury here or there. That's like a rare elite company to me that maybe Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen could be in. I guess when healthy, Joe Burrow is pretty damn good every single, week to week to week. But that fraternity is pretty small there. Everybody else, I think, no matter how good they are, needs some help, needs some environment, needs some good coaching around them.
I guess the follow-up to that is, if he's not the guy he was the year they went to the Super Bowl, what does that mean for this team?
That's a great question. I think that depends on the 53-man roster around him. There are guys, like Joe Flacco's best year, was it the year he won the Super Bowl? Statistically, no, it was his best postseason. He was unbelievable that year when he was unbelievable that postseason when he led the Ravens to a Super Bowl. But I don't know if he finished with statistics that would have made you say he was the top 3 quarterback in the game at that point, right? But that was a great Ravens team and had a lot of good weapons, a lot of good veterans. And I think if there's a really good 53 by Howie Roseman and the front office. And no, I don't think Jalen Hurts has to be a top 3 quarterback to win a Super Bowl.
When you look back, he mentioned, the injuries. He's like, oh, the team could say what they want. He never appeared on the injury report. But what do you make of all that? Like that knee and all this stuff, and he didn't run. He wasn't obviously as elusive, and he just constantly looked like something was up. But we never heard anything after the season was over. It wasn't like one of those things where it's like, oh, by the way, Jalen Hurts ended up getting his knee cleaned out, or is it, it almost seemed like it went away and the team never addressed the fact that, was he dealing with injuries? Like, what do you make of that? That does seem a little odd now that we're getting ready for this training camp.
I will say, I think the team has always done a good job, but especially Jalen Hurts' camp, they do a good job of not putting stuff out there so that if a reporter hears something that may have happened, an injury here or a procedure here and there, it's like there's no double confirm. There's nobody who can come out and say, yeah, this is happening. So, I definitely believe, I know he obviously had a knee injury last year. He talked about it. They never really, there were times he was not on the injury report, but anybody with eyes watched him run at times last year, and you could tell he was not as elusive, he was not as dynamic, and not as willing to run at times. And by the way, that just goes to show you how tough the dude is. I mean, he's been, whether it was the knee last year, I think it was the shoulder collarbone going in, the last month of the season, the year before when they went to the Super Bowl. He had the ankle thing the year before that. The guy is really, he plays through a lot of stuff, and he takes a lot of punishment, nature of the position, but also the nature of the way he plays the position. Doesn't miss a whole lot of games. But yeah, I definitely think he was hampered. Now, that gets into the question, Mike. If you're going to play that style of football where you're going to have the quarterback run a lot, tush-push play where he's always underneath the pile, does he need to graduate and become less like that? And is that an ultimatum or a referendum, I should say, on the kind of quarterback he is? I don't think the story of Jalen Hurts is fully written. It shouldn't be at this stage of his career, and we'll see if he continues to develop as a thrower and can run on his terms. I don't think that should ever go away. But, you look at Lamar Jackson. They built a passing offense around him last year, but he still ran when he wanted to run. They still did use design runs at times. But it wasn't per se the backbone of the offense the way it was when Greg Roman was their offensive coordinator, because Todd Monken wanted to go out there and build more offensive weaponry around him. They draft Zay Flowers, right? They bring in Odell, and they try to give him some more weapons. And clearly, Jalen Hurts has enough weapons here to be a really good quarterback if he doesn't run as much. So we will see if the new offense and in a year of Jalen Hurts, more development, if he becomes a throwing quarterback who runs advantageously, or if it's still running the ball with him is still a major, if it's still 1-2 reads, then go.
Right, and I guess, if he's not the RPO guy, one of the things that made him so dangerous the year before was, I felt anyway, see if you agree or disagree, I felt he always made the right decision. Like, if it was hand the ball off, he handed it off. It was to keep it and run himself, he kept it and run himself. It was to pull it and find somebody open, he made the right decision and found the right guy. That seemed a lot clunkier last year. Do you agree with that, or are you not on the same page with me?
No, it seemed clunkier. And, a lot of people say, well, that's because you lost Shane Steichen. And maybe there was something to that. I don't think the RPO is like the most complex thing. I mean, there are different ways to run it. And as we've sort of gone through the years here, the way it looked 5 or 6 years ago when it was simply just pull and throw a slant, now you're seeing a lot more run action off it. You are seeing the RPO game evolve a little bit. So it's not just how it looked 5 or 6 years ago, but it's still not a very complex play. And I do think that part of the clunkiness last year was teams expecting it because the Eagles were running it at among the highest rates in the NFL the 2 years going into last year. So obviously teams are going to adjust. They're going to practice against it, especially the teams in your division that get used to it. They get used to your tendencies, and that's where you need to either become less of an RPO team or freshen up the RPO plays that you are running.
Jeff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. You take a look at, and somebody would say, like, look, you got Jalen Hurts, you've got A.J. Brown, Smith, Goddard, this offensive line, how is he a product of the weapons around him, or do they kind of elevate? You know what I'm saying? Like, because some people would say, like, hey, he's got all these weapons. Because 3 years ago, he was a pretty average player, right? I think we could all agree on that. And then he got A.J. Brown, and that kind of took him to this next level. So how did he make that jump? And is that because he is there's an elite player in there somewhere, or was he a byproduct of what the offense was and what's around him?
Yeah, that's why I brought up the chapter of Jalen Hurts is not written yet. I would hate to declare what he is right now and say that's what he's going to be for the rest of his career. But to your question, I only think there's a couple of quarterbacks in this league. I think Patrick Mahomes has shown, like, you can take away Tyreek Hill from him. You can take away some of his other weapons. You can leave him with an offense like last year that really was very, very modest by Kansas City Chiefs standards as far as, weaponry. And the guy still won the Super Bowl, right? I mean, yes, they had a great defense, but the bottom line is he won another Super Bowl because he's that level of quarterback. I don't think it's fair to put Jalen Hurts in that or near that category yet until we see him have to win games with less than that kind of firepower. However, as I keep saying, he's young. He's already surprised a lot of people with how far he came since year one, and I will never write the final chapter on him without giving it a couple of years to see how this thing goes. Now, if he has a really bad year coming up in 2024, Mike, if he does not play well, if he regresses, and then you sandwich that with how he ended last year, 2023, then maybe you start to get a vibe that he needs a lot of firepower, or when teams catch up to him and start game planning against him, he's not gifted enough to adjust. But again, we're talking about the quarterback. Wins are not a quarterback stat, right? I mean, he can play, to me, at just a good to very good level, and the Eagles could be really good if everybody around Jalen Hurts is also playing at a high level.
Yeah, I know the quarterback gets a lot of it, but, hey, you have Brown and Smith and Goddard and now Saquon Barkley. A lot of people are going to look to the quarterback if he struggles again, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no excuse unless the offensive line is really takes a huge step back, or unless you got major injuries. I mean, they do have some depth issues at wide receiver. So if A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith were to go down for a prolonged amount of time, Dallas Goedert has had some injuries. If you have two guys go down, well, then you could say, all right, well, that's an issue. But at the same time, in the context of our discussion, you will still look at the quarterback and say, hey, man, this is your 5, your 6. Like, you got to start, dealing with that and lifting up players when your starters go down. So that does tell people what kind of quarterback you are. If everybody goes down and you are not a good player, well, then that's a reflection of you as a quarterback as well.
Yeah, and I would say, looking at the list of 10 that they, the executives and whoever, they do this every year, the executives, scouts, talent evaluators, coaches. I don't have a guy on this list that I think Hurts definitively should be ahead of. Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers, C.J. Stroud, Herbert, Stafford, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. Like, I don't know if there's one guy there that I would have to vigorously argue about that Hurts. Now, I think what you said is right. Like, he was in this list entering last year based on what he did the year before. So right. Can he get back to that level? That remains to be seen. But I don't think he's definitively better than any of these 10 guys.
Like I said, after the just the no-brainer top, the guys who you watch on a week-to-week basis and say they win because they have this guy and this guy only, and there's only just a couple of quarterbacks I think that really fit that. After that, to me, it's like you put it in a blender because you have guys who can be really, really good, like Jared Goff you mentioned, like Dak Prescott. Jalen Hurts at times, very many times, can be really, really good, but all of those guys can have bad games too, and have had bad games, and that's why, Goff is a perfect example. I use Matthew Stafford, but I bet you like 2 years ago he was in nobody's top 10, right? So it just shows you, like, it's your environment, the coaching. That's most of the quarterbacks in this league. They need help. They need good coaching. They need a good environment. They need good playmakers around them. So it's not a knock when we discuss this on Jalen Hurts. There really may only be 2 or 3 guys who you think can just win by being on the field and their name is their name.
All right, so they sign Saquon Barkley in the offseason, and the over-unders are out for him, all right? You ready for these ones? Moshe, all right, I was going to say, I didn't know you were still there. No, sorry.
Dramatic pause, my fault.
Dramatic pause. All right, so, I mean, I think these are interesting for Barkley because obviously he's the guy who moved and everybody's kind of waiting to see what everybody thinks. All right, regular season rushing yards for Barkley, over under 1,050.5.
Oh, man, this is so tough if you don't know how many games he's going to play. But I'm going to assume he'll stay healthy. Play most of the season. I'll put him over 1,050. I think I would do that.
Regular season.
I mean, with 17 games now, Mike, 1,050, you basically have to average, like 65 rushing yards a game? I haven't done the math, but it's not that hard.
Yeah. Oh, listen, 1,000 yards used to be the number. Now you see 1,000, you're right. You have to kind of recalibrate it with the extra game in there. If you don't get 1,000, are you really that good? I mean, even DeAndre Swift had 1,000 yards last year.
That's right.
Regular season rushing touchdowns, over under 7.5.
Oh, wow. I'm thinking that we might not see as much tush push this year, so I'm going to go over on that.
Okay. No tush push. Goal line carries go to Barkley. More touchdowns from the running back than the quarterback. I think Hurts had, 9 rushing touchdowns last year, so keep that in mind if you're going to use those numbers for Hurts. All right. These are the interesting ones. Regular season receptions, Saquon Barkley, over under 40.5.
40.5? That's like not even 3 a game, right? I'll take the over on that.
Okay, so you think he'll be a bigger part of the pass offense than some of these other guys?
Yeah, that's basically 2.5 per game if my math serves me correct.
Well, I don't know that that's been easily achieved by these other backs in the past, and we've always kind of left scratching our head as to why the running back is not a bigger part of the pass game, right?
Well, that is a fair point. And to your point, DeAndre Swift had his fewest receptions of his career last year. But I'm big on, I think you are too. Just because it happened last year doesn't mean it's going to happen this year. I'm a big variance guy, and I think with this offense and Saquon's ability to catch the ball, that I actually think they're going to probably try to get the screen back, and it was terrible last year. So I will go again. If he plays 8 games because he gets hurt, then
right. These are all based on him getting through the season healthy. Obviously,
yeah. Which is its own betting odds. Like, does he play at least 15 or more games?
Right, exactly. Regular season receiving yards. Over, under, what would you set it at?
So let's see. I'd probably set it at, I don't know. This is tough. Give me a second here. So I'm already saying he's going to average about 3 catches a game, right? So 3 catches, give him 25, 30. Put him at like 450.
You have 450, so you're taking the over. The over-under is 325.5.
Yeah, that's probably more fair.
Yeah.
I have a feeling he's going to have games where he catches like 6 or 7 balls and then games where he doesn't catch any.
Last one. Regular season receiving touchdowns, 2.5.
I'm going to go under on that.
By the way, Jalen Hurts had 15 rushing touchdowns last year, 13 in 2023, 10 in 2022. DeAndre Swift had 5 rushing touchdowns last year, and Miles Sanders had 11 in 2022. Miles Sanders, he really had a huge year for them.
We would talk about it on Inside the Birds all the time, that his running style had developed and grown as an Eagle, from a guy who was trying to make the big cut every time, the big run, and he became more of a grinder. And I would say 2 years ago, he was known as more of a grinder than even Saquon was. Because Greg Cosell brought this up on our Giants preview a week or 2 ago, that the Giants have tried to use Saquon, especially 2 years ago when they made the playoffs, as a grinded out running back, fourth quarter carry kind of guy when you're up in a game, and they struggled with it. So he really doesn't have, despite his size and his tremendous abilities, he has not really carved out that role yet as a guy who you can just make your workhorse, and he's always going to get you the positive yards, fall forward, get you the yards, and drain that clock out.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, anticipate that Barkley, he's a tough guy to tackle. He's a big physical back, but, that's not been the way that he has kind of had success as his first. I'm just interested to see what he looks like behind an offensive line that's capable.
I'm sure he is too.
Well, that and
all of the organs in his body agree with you.
Well, that and we know the Giants front office has thought the same thing. Is they have said, hey. What's he going to be like behind an offensive line like Detroit or Philadelphia if you watch the Hard Knocks, and now we see him in Philadelphia. What will he look like behind that offensive line? We're going to start to find out soon as the Eagles report in less than 10 days, and we'll have coverage here on Football at 4. And all the guys over at the Inside the Birds podcast, they're really breaking down this offseason and getting you ready for training camp. And, of course, we'll have more on Football at 4. All right, Moshe, thanks, buddy.
Have a great one, Mike.
All right, good breakdown there on the over-unders. What do you guys think? Over-under rushing yards, 1,050 for Saquon Barkley. Over-under 7.5 touchdowns for Saquon Barkley. Over-under 40 receptions this year for 325 yards. If those are his numbers at the end of the year, are you happy about that? Are you excited about those numbers? 1,050, I think I'm disappointed. If he hits under, or he's around 1,000, I got to get like 1,350 out of him.
Just rushing, you mean?
Yeah. 1,350 rushing is the number I want to see.
Yeah, I would like to see around 1,400. I think that would be...
For what they paid him.
Well, more than what he paid him, this is going to be the best offense he's ever played in. So if he's ever going to perform at a high level, it's going to be here with this offensive line.
You would hope. You would hope. All right, coming up, Knicks Nuggets are in the house on the Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. The Nuggets, they're next.
We have the...
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Traffic. You come with me. The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
429 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Don't forget tonight, Alec Boehm in the Home Run Derby, and you can listen to it right here on 97.3 ESPN. Well, I picked a terrible day to go to Citizens Bank Park yesterday. Not only did the Phillies lose 18-3 in a Home Run Derby preview, it was the hottest day of all time at the ballpark. Nick Earnshaw is here with another edition of Nick's Nuggets on the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage, Rio Grande, moving to Breeze with Clark's Moving and Storage. Yeah, Nick, we impromptu made the decision yesterday. Hey, let's go up to the Phils game. We'll go up to today and watch the game. And it was hot, it was sticky, it was miserable, and the Phillies were not interested in being there yesterday.
Oh, that was probably the most brutal game of the entire season, Mike. You decided to go to last second. I mean, 18 runs. The Athletics were, they looked like the best team in baseball. Looked like they flipped the sides on yesterday. It was crazy, and it did look really hot. And then you had the rain coming in after. Now, did you get caught in the rain at all? I don't think you got caught in the rain, did you?
I did not. I did not get caught in the rain. It was like literally, it felt like it was right there. Like the wind was starting to whip and pick up a little bit. But by the time we got over the bridge to Jersey, it was, pretty clear and, it was a fine ride home.
All right. So at least you didn't get hit with the rain, pretty bad at the game, because that could have been bad. Because at the end, it was a pure darkness in Philadelphia towards the end of that ball game. But yeah, what a brutal one. And Mike, that's where I got to start with the Nuggets.
And Brent Rooker, I mean, what a big weekend for him. I mean, he was showing off in front of Dave Dombrowski and the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, 2 home runs yesterday, over 450 feet, dead center. I mean, he was mashing the baseball. And I see people joking on Twitter, or X, I should say, about Rooker's value and how it's gone up over the weekend. Look, he had 3 straight multi-hit games against the Phillies. I mean, that's pretty crazy stuff. I mean, he was fantastic. He had 5 RBIs yesterday. He had an RBI in each game before that in games 1 and 2 of the series. So he had a total of 7 RBIs. And I mean, the guy can hit the baseball. He's been really good the past 2 seasons. He's on pace. I believe he had 30 home runs last year. He might even eclipse that this year. So this is a guy you got to watch out for, Mike. Now the Phillies, this has been a name that's been floated around a lot. We've talked about it going back a few weeks now about Brent Rooker being a possibility for the Phillies. Now, the problem with him is he's been a DH for most of the season. Hasn't been played since early May in the outfield. His glove is okay. It's not great. It's not great over Schwarber, but that's the concern. And that's what kind of the conversation has been, I feel like, for a lot of the Rooker talk is he the right fit? I think he's the right fit. I think, you're not going to have to give up as much. I don't think you're going to have to give up to, one of your guys like Painter or Miller or Crawford. Those guys, I don't think you're going to have to give up.
You sure about that?
I don't think so. I don't believe. I think you're going to have to give up a little bit more, maybe more guys in your farm system, but I think you can get away with not giving up one of those guys for Rooker. Because Rooker, I mean, I understand he has club control, but he's not this superstar name that's out there right now.
I think that here's the problem. The fit as a hitter is probably better than any other fit out there that's been mentioned. He's a right-handed bat who hits for a ton of power. He could go hit right in the middle of the lineup. You want to put him in the 4 spot, or do you put him in the 5 spot? I don't think that there's a better fit of any other candidate out there. Do you agree with that?
I agree with you there. The fit people keep talking about is the outfield and the glove. I'm not worried about that. The bat is what matters.
The bat, right. The fit as a defensive player is not there. He is not a good defensive player. So now you're bringing in another DH, and you're going to put him in left field. Now, mind you, this team won a World Series with Pat Burrell playing left field. Now, could you bring him in to be your left fielder, platoon Marsh and Rojas in center, and then whoever's not the starter that day basically goes in as a defensive replacement for Rooker late in games? Are you okay with mixing and matching and playing that game all the way through? I don't know that I agree wholeheartedly. I think if you're Oakland, if I'm Billy Beane and I just had that guy do what he did this weekend, I'm holding you hostage. I'm saying you got to give me one of your best guys. You pick. I want either Painter, I want either Crawford, or I want why is his name escaping me? Miller. I want one of those 3. You guys pick which one it is, but I want one of those 3 included in a deal.
See, I agree. I think that's what Billy Beane should do. I mean, he should have Dombrowski on 3 again, like he did in Moneyball. I mean, recreate the scene all over again, essentially. But I think for the Phillies, I don't think they're going to have to give up one of those guys. I think they could give up, and they have a little bit more depth than they've had in recent years, right? Maybe you do make a trade. Maybe you move Rojas. Maybe that's who you give up. Maybe that's a piece you give up. I don't think that would happen. But there's a couple of ways you could go about this in getting Rooker. I don't think I've seen some mock trades. They haven't included any of the top 3 in their system for a Brent Rooker. I think, what is he going to be? He's 29 now, I believe, right this second. I think he's 29. He's going to be 30. So he's up there in age at this point. He's a bit of a late bloomer. I get the A's are going to try and maximize value for Rooker, but I think they're going to get more if they trade Mason Miller. I don't think the Phillies are in the Mason Miller sweepstakes, but the Rooker sweepstakes, I think, is more their speed. They won't have to part with one of those guys. I know he had a great weekend, but it's one great weekend. You can do that against anybody. Maybe he was doing, a little extra oomph into him to try and get himself to Philadelphia this weekend. But I don't think they're going to have to give up one of those 3. I just don't see it. I don't think he's that type of name. I don't think he's a Luis Robert where you probably will have to give up one of those type of players to get a superstar like Robert in Chicago. Rooker, not as a flashy name, 29 years old, a little older. That's something to look at for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one because, look, this guy made the All-Star game last year, so he has 2 consecutive years of production. Yeah. And he profiles to exactly what you need, a power right-handed bat. The problem is he does not play a lot of defense. So you have that going against him. So what level of prospect are the A's looking for here? That remains to be seen. I've seen trades that are, these people are all over the map. One guy will say, hey, it's going to take Miller. One guy's going to say it's going to take Crawford. Somebody else might say no. It'll only be, if they said give us Mick Abel, that deal's done.
Yes.
If that's the headline of the trade, Mick Abel is the headline, of course you make that move. But that's not going to get it done. You're going to have to do more than that. I don't know. They're in a tough spot here because Rooker produced in your ballpark. He came in there and under the pressure and under the trade rumors said, you need a right-handed bat? Look what I just did in your ballpark. Think about what I would do in your lineup now. That makes it a lot more difficult, man.
Yeah, it does. I mean, a Starlin Caba they could give up, Mick Abel, Carlos De La Cruz, guys with upside. Maybe you get a bunch of them together, the lower levels after the top 3. Like, hey, we'll give you a bunch of our prospects. You're just not touching one of those top 3 if you're Dave Dombrowski. It's a tough spot because he really just cooked the Phillies over this weekend. And, they lost the series to the Athletics, and Brent Rooker was a gigantic part of the reason why the Phillies lost this series. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens at the deadline and who they're going to give up if they do part with one of the 3. Now, Mike, if you do part with one of the 3, if you're Dombrowski, you get rid of one of Painter, Miller, or Crawford, which one are you more susceptible to giving up? Would you rather give up Crawford, a Miller? I don't think Painter is touchable. I think he's totally untouchable at this point. I think Miller and Crawford might have the most leeway here.
It's a tough one because of your contractual situations. You have a shortstop signed for the next, 11 years in Trey Turner. Now, people have buzzed, you can move Turner. Anybody can kind of be, things are fluid, okay? But you have a third baseman who you would imagine is going to get re-signed in Bohm. You have a second baseman who the organization likes a lot in Stott. So your infield is pretty set for the next 8 to 10 years, you would imagine. Harper, Turner, Stott, Bohm. That's going to be your starting infield for a decade, right?
Yeah.
So where does Aiden Miller fit into that?
Miller could move over to third base for me, and Bohm could go to first.
Okay, so what are you doing with Harper?
Harper goes to DH. Harper becomes a full-time DH. Schwarber, maybe that's the guy you let go down the line the next year or so.
Okay, well, that's a possibility then. That's not a bad one to say, Harper, you're getting phased out. I don't know that Harper's going to comply with that, but it's an idea. Do you think Bryce Harper's going to say, sure, make me the DH?
One of them I could see totally turning into the DH. Definitely. Maybe Bohm or one of them's going to turn into a DH. Definitely.
Okay. Well, maybe that's a possibility. So the other one would be Crawford.
Yes.
You just talked about Schwarber. He has 2 years left on his deal, and
2 years.
Same with Castellanos. So you would imagine, I don't see any scenario where both of those guys get re-signed when their contract's up. And I think if you pick one over the other, you're probably picking Schwarber over Castellanos, right?
I would say so, based on production. I mean, Castellanos has been fantastic. It's a tough call. It's like, how are they going to approach the future and utilizing these guys? So
Castellanos has been fantastic?
No, Schwarber's been fantastic.
Oh, you said Castellanos.
No, I meant Schwarber.
I just wanted to clear the air there because I don't want you to sound like a dum-dum.
Yeah. No. I meant Schwarber. Right. Schwarber's been fantastic. God, we know how much I love leadoff Schwarber. I mean, that's the best guy out there to lead off your at-bats in your games. But.
So what does Brandon Marsh, what does his future look like? Do the Phillies say this is a guy that has to be in our organization? And Rojas, same situation. So with that, I think Crawford's path, now he just got promoted to Double-A Reading, so he's another step closer. Crawford has a better path than Miller does.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Center field, because Rojas, I feel like could be expendable down the line, even maybe this year. Who knows? Marsh, I feel like it's a guy they want to keep around in the organization, but Crawford, I think he's someone they really believe in. And he could play center field. He's got a good glove. It could, they still have problems in center field. They've had them for years. He could solve that problem right away and be the long-term starter there. I don't think Rojas would be the long-term starter down the line if you have a Justin Crawford waiting in the wing. So he's more expendable. It's going to be fascinating who they value more. Are they going to value Crawford or Miller more at the deadline? Or maybe both. Maybe they get to keep them all at some point. But this is a team that wants to win a championship now. They may have to part with one of those guys. I mean, you got to give up something to get something. So Rooker, I don't know if they're going to have to give up one of those two. It's a possibility. I don't think they move Painter. It's going to be tough, but you're going to have to give up something to get something for sure.
Painter, I think, has no shot of moving. That would be me. That would be my take there. And quite frankly, he's got Tommy John. He is back. He's throwing right now. But is he the guy that other teams are going to call for? I don't know. The A's are in a weird situation.
Yep.
You have one of the elite closers in baseball. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. 104 miles an hour, 4 straight pitches, has an attitude about him. I mean, he is a closer. And yet he's on a team that has no closing opportunities for him. But as a young pitcher, it's like, what is your organizational goal here? Like, this is I have a young fireballer who's the best of the best in his profession. But we're on a team where we don't need that spot. So you trade him to get more young pieces. Well, you already have a young guy. The problem is the team is in such disarray that he doesn't fit. It's so sad to see that whole situation out there.
No, it's brutal out there in Oakland. Remember, they're just going to be the Athletics next year. The Athletics and the A's. They're not even going to have a designation of where they're from, a city. They're not going to have a city in front of their team name next year because they're going to be playing in a AAA park before they move to Vegas. I mean, they're a total disaster out there in Oakland right now. It's a nightmare. I feel bad for the fans specifically, but it's weird. Yeah, like you have this stud closer who's young, and you're going to move on from him to get more young it's just, I don't know what they're doing. No one really ever knows what the Oakland A's are doing. They're a confusing organization, terribly run, clearly. And, maybe you can't, that's what I'm saying. Maybe you don't have to give up one of those top prospects for Rooker. You give them a bunch of young guys and they'll be happy at this point to move Rooker off their team. Who knows? Who knows?
Listen,
what Oakland's
to close this one out, if the A's were playing hardball here, I'm not giving up either one of those guys unless I get your number one guy.
All right. I like it. We'll see. All right. Moving on. Nugget number 2. Home run derby is tonight, Mike. Boom. Do you have a prediction for him? I think he gets to the second round. I think he moves past the opening round. That's my prediction. I don't think he wins it, but I think he will get past that first round and into the top 4. I think he's going to surprise some people tonight because home run derby, it's a little different, man. Like you're not getting a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. What he mentioned the other day, he's not seeing 98 from a pitcher. So I think he moves on from the first round. I don't think he wins it. Mike, what's your prediction for Alec Bohm tonight?
Bohm's a guy that I think, much like I talked about this last week, Bobby Abreu was not a home run hitter. He was more of a doubles guy, and he had one of the great performances in home run derby history. If he gets going, if he gets onto a streak where he just kind of gets in a rhythm and a groove, then yeah, I could see Bohm hitting a bunch of home runs. I think, though, the thing's going to be he's going to have to hit a bunch in like one of his at-bats. Like he's going to have one where he hits a ton in one of his at-bats, and it's a cumulative thing, so they'll all add up. He wouldn't be the best to go mano-a-mano. He's probably going to be better if you add all his up, which is what the thing is. So I think this fits better for him. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of the, Final 4.
Yeah, I think he's a Final 4. I don't think he wins it. Listen, I'm still gonna place a little bit of cash on Mr. Bohm, but I think he gets past that first round, and it's exciting. When you have a Philadelphia Philly represented, I don't know if you saw, Mike, they put out a selfie, Christopher Sanchez and all the All-Stars in the outfield, all of them in their Phillies uniform, not in the All-Star uniform. It was all of them in the Phillies uniform with the All-Star hats. It was pretty cool. They put it out on social media. I'm excited, man. You got a lot of All-Stars out there. I know Wheeler's not going, Ranger as well. Those are the two guys kind of staying back to get healthy. But seeing a bunch of those Phillies players out there, I mean, it feels like it's been a long time since we've had like a couple of guys out there. It's usually like 1 or 2, This year, you got almost the whole roster out there.
Yeah, you get to see a bunch, but the injuries diminish. No Suarez. Sanchez gets the spot there. Wheeler's not going to throw. So we'll see what ends up happening because Strom had to end up coming into the game yesterday, but he should be okay. We'll see. Turner's hitting third, Harper's hitting fourth, and Bohm's hitting seventh in the All-Star game lineup, so you'll get a chance to see those guys. Yeah, having your guys in the game definitely adds to it.
Yeah, home run derby, all-star game. When the Phillies are in it, you're tuned in. Mike, are you going to actually tune into the home run derby tonight to watch the Bomer?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'll probably check to see how he does. It gives me a little. I can't remember. When was the last time a Philly player like Schwarber hasn't done it since he's been on the Phillies, right?
Yeah, Schwarber did it. Schwarber did it a couple years ago, 2022.
Okay.
He was the last one to do it.
I was gonna say I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember that.
Schwarber and then Hoskins before him a couple years before Schwarber did it.
Gotcha.
So those are like the last two guys.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll probably tune him in. Probably will. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to be texting.
I don't know that I'm going to watch the whole thing. I might just watch Bohm.
All right. Just watch. At least if you watch Bohm, your homework's done for tonight. Because I'm going to text him and be like, hey, you watching? Bohm's tearing it up right now. Hopefully that's a text you'll get. He's tearing it up for tonight. All right. Final nugget number 3. Joel Embiid, Team USA. He was back at it again today. He played the least amount of minutes today for Team USA from one of the starters. I believe he only played 16 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. I know there's been a lot of discussion and talk about Embiid in the Olympics, and he hasn't looked right. It feels like people are saying he hasn't been a great fit. He's been getting double teamed a lot. Do you think this is just him trying to get back into the swing of things? And like in the beginning of the season, usually for the Sixers, he has a slow start. Do you think it's kind of that slow start mentality, Mike, for Embiid, kind of getting his feet under him a little bit?
I watched a lot of that game today. Okay. It was on early, so we had it on in here. That game is everything that's wrong with basketball in this country right now. The Australian team should not be in the same building as the Americans. Okay. Just watching them out there. It looks like you found 5 dudes who just said, yeah, none of us can play, but we'll hustle our asses off. And they just competed in a game against the United States basketball team. That game should have been a 40-point blowout. And I don't know what Embiid's doing or what they're doing with Embiid. I mean, he's not really playing all that much. They're not really playing him all that much. But just the sheer size and skill of the Americans against that Australian team, the game should not even be competitive at all.
Yeah, it was 98-92 was the final.
Yeah, it should never have been that close. 98-92, and it should never, ever, ever. I mean, the size, just look at the two teams. There's no comparison. But every time you turn and watch, it is a USA basketball player with the ball trying to stare down the defender and just trying to put a highlight tape on them. They want to cross them up. They want to make them look stupid. And the Australian team is just out hustling, out running, out doing everything. The whole thing is a microcosm of the problems that we're going through in basketball in this country. Are they going to win the tournament? Yeah, because they're just physically bigger, stronger, faster, and more talented than all of these teams. But come on, for that game to be close, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, they asked Steve Kerr after the game if Embiid, shouldn't start, if he should come off the bench at this point. Embiid's the best center in basketball, and when he went out of the game, I think what was it, a 20-point lead, and it got cut down to 6, which is what they lost by. I mean, what does that tell you?
The Australians just constantly took the ball to the basket because Embiid wasn't out there in the paint.
Right. I don't know what they're doing. It's very confusing to me. I don't think it's an Embiid problem. I think it might be a philosophical problem on USA basketball. And like you mentioned, with everything that's wrong with the game right now, it's on display. So very interesting stuff. That's good stuff, something to keep an eye on for sure with Joel and what he's doing on Team USA. Mike, that's my final nugget of the day. Nugget number 3. A 3-pack for you on this Monday afternoon.
Yeah, there you go. All right. It was, what was the final score of that game? It was like a 6-point win.
98-92.
Yeah, 6-point win for Team USA against the Australian team, who literally looked like, when I was at WVU, there was a team that won the intramural championships. That's what the Australians. It just looked like a bunch of guys who put together a team and they just like playing together. They have a lot of fun, and that's what that team looked like today.
YMCA Australians out there.
Yeah, Patty Mills, Josh Giddey. It was
used to be Ben Simmons. Home
Ben
team.
hasn't played for the Boomers though. He I don't think he's played for his country since he's been in the NBA.
I think he played 1 year.
He was supposed to play the 1 year, and he never ended up playing. There was a big to-do about him that he was going to play for the Boomers. They're called the Boomers.
Right.
It's a big honor to play for the Boomers.
It is. Big honor.
All right, there's today's Nuggets.
All right, Mike.
See you, Nick. All right, there's Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform. Use the hashtag SBLive at Mike Gill Show. Hey, don't forget, we're celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. I can't believe 15 years of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN with happy hour Fridays throughout the summer. Select Fridays, we're going to be on the road at local establishments all over South Jersey. And the first one we're going to be hitting is Juliana's Pub and Grill in Egg Harbor Township. We'll be out there July 26th, next Friday. 15 years of the Sports Bash. You're all invited. Come on out, see the show live, have a beer with the Sports Bash, and enter to win tickets to see the Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day at Citizens Bank Park. It's $3.50 Bud Light Drafts, $4 neutral vodka seltzers, all during the show. And then we're going to hang around, watch the Phillies that night. I think they play the Guardians that night. Outdoor patio, Giuliano's Pub and Grill, Egg Harbor Township, happy hour Friday. Come on out and see the show to celebrate 50.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. I'm Mike Gill. Well, the Phillies finished the first half of the season 62 wins, best in baseball, but they ended it with a stinker. We're going to get some insight now on the All-Star game, what is happening with this Phillies team moving forward, the National League, and more as we take a look at, by the way, the All-Star Game Home Run Derby you can listen to right here tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Jim Duquette is the former GM of the Mets. You can hear him on Power Alley weekdays from 10 to 1 on Sirius XM's MLB Network Radio. Tomorrow he'll be hosting Sirius XM's All-Star pregame programming live from Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. And he joins us now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jim, welcome aboard, man. How you doing?
Hey, Mike, what's happening? Everything is good here from Texas, getting ready to watch some of the Derby tonight. You going to get a chance to watch it?
Yeah, looking forward to seeing Alec Boehm, not thought of to be a big home run hitter, but like Bobby Abreu a couple of years ago I guess it was 2005, not a couple of years ago, but he was not a home run hitter, but he got grooving and hit a bunch out there at Comerica. I think Boehm could be similar.
Yeah, I do too. He's somewhat local. I think he works out in Houston, and he'll have some family, a lot of fans and family here too. Phillies always travel well, so yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him. There's some guys, Alonso is always good in this event. Bobby Witt's a local kid. There'll be a lot of fans, I think, supporting him. So, and I like they made a couple of tweaks to the Derby, kind of streamline it a little bit, and I like that. I don't think it's going to drag. Sometimes it can drag, and so I think they've tightened that up a little bit too.
Yeah, Gunnar Henderson, a lot of young flair out there. Is that kind of the theme, Jim, of this All-Star weekend or this All-Star game this year? Is how many young players have kind of infiltrated this game?
You know what? It is a theme. I think there's 25 or it might be even more first timers. There's 4 rookies that are All-Stars. Including the starter for the National League and Paul Skeens, who's obviously come on the scene really fast. Obviously, how good the Phillies have been. I mean but I think it is the youth's taken over the sport. If you're in your from age 24 to 28 or 9, that's almost a prime age these days for guys in their peak years. Some guys are able to extend it into to early 30s, but. I think that is a common theme, I think, throughout this is how young the rosters for both teams are.
Jim, you mentioned how young, and the Phillies have 8 All-Stars out there. Some young, some old, some kind of came out of right field. You know, guy like Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, Matt Strum, Jeff Hoffman, who had been, left for dead, and here they are in the All-Star game. Are the Phillies and the 8 All-Stars, has that been the story of the first half for you, or are you looking around baseball and saying they're just one of many big stories?
Well, no. I think the Phillies, by far, right? Not just the All-Stars, but the number of wins, the lead that they have. There are some leads, and we've seen it, and you have too, I'm sure, like in the National League East, you see some leads evaporate, right? There's the famous ones, Mets 7 up with 17 to play. We saw the Mets lose out to the Braves a couple of years ago. I think that, this lead that the Phillies have now, while you never will sit there and call it for sure, but this one feels like it's different in terms of the number of games that they are ahead of Atlanta, that you feel pretty comfortable just because of how well built and how well rounded the Phillies team is.
Jim Duquette, MLB Sirius XM Radio. All right, I got to ask you this. As a guy who was a GM in this league, the Phillies obviously kicking around, looking for outfield help, maybe some bullpen help. If you're the A's and you were just in town this weekend, what's those calls like when you have a guy like Rooker doing what he did and that team's interested? Does that change the ask? I mean, take our listeners a little bit into how those calls happen when the two teams who might be having trade talks play and that guy excels to the level that he did.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're Oakland, and you have this player, this really good player who's had a really good season. It started slow, and he's been on fire lately. He's a big power guy, and you have him under control for several more years. Probably should have been in the All-Star game. He was their All-Star last year. And the power bat, it's hard to find. There's not a lot of offensive players that are out there and available. Like that, it already comes at a premium. And, if you're Philly, the hard part, for them is, like, they don't need them. Would they like them? Yeah. But, you could find a complimentary piece that would fit in just as fine, too. So that's the hard part. Dave, a lot of people have kind of said, Dave Dombrowski's only going to, just add on to the roster in smaller pieces. I would never assume that with Dave. Dave's going to be a Hall of Fame general manager. I've known him for 25 years, and he's one of the best out there at finding, the right fit. And if he has to spend the extra assets in prospect capital, he'll go do that. So Rooker would be a guy, you hear him, Luis Robert. I don't think Luis Robert's going to get moved, and I don't think that's as good of a fit there. But, if you're Oakland, you have to wait for, a top guy, one of their top, like a painter. It would hurt, and it would be painful from a prospect side of things. So that's why I think it's hard for the Phillies to do it.
Yeah, I mean, is Rooker, he's 29, controlled. Is he worth giving up a Miller, a Painter, or a Crawford? Or are you saying that's just too much of an ask?
Don't do it. Don't do it. I wouldn't do it. It would be one thing if, we always talk about, all right, well, are you one player away from getting to the World Series, right? And so if the answer to that is yes, you would consider moving maybe one of those guys. But this is already a good and likely, World Series type of team without Brent Rooker. They don't need him unless they had an injury between now and July 30th, because you can't, as you can't improve your team anymore, in August with these waiver trades that you used to be able to do when I was in the front office. So, I think that, you look at what they had, obviously they had to release Merrifield, if they found a veteran, to kind of replace him and the versatility there. I think you can do something like that. Maybe it's a platoon type situation in the outfield, but I don't think they need to go all in and give up, a huge piece of their future for Rooker, because they're a pretty well-built team as it is.
Jim Duquette, Sirius XM, MLB Network Radio, Power Alley 10-1. They'll be out at the All-Star game. They're at the All-Star game, and they'll be previewing all the festivities there. You got Mason Miller, 104, 4 pitches in a row the other day, just dominated, closing. Is he a guy you would be willing to give up one of those 3 prospects for?
Well, I think that you're in the right, the right quality to get him. It would require that for sure. There's been a lot of speculation about Mason Miller. The only reason why, if I'm Oakland, I would trade Mason Miller is you are concerned about his long-term health. He's had some health issues. He's overcome diabetes, which is a great story. But, he had some arm issues when he was trying to figure it out as a starter, so they put him in the bullpen. But if I'm Oakland, he still has his rookie status. If he ends up being Rookie of the Year this year, they get a draft pick, with the new rules that have been changed. We saw the Orioles get a draft pick this year for Gunnar Henderson being a Rookie of the Year last year. Same thing with Arizona for Corbin Carroll. So Oakland is sitting there looking at potentially another, that pick was, I think, 31 or 32 this year. That's a really valuable pick. I don't think Oakland can afford to trade him. So, in my mind, I don't think they're going to move him, even though other people do. I think it's more likely they would trade a Rooker, or they have I don't know if Lucas Erceg had pitched in that series much, but that guy has an electric arm. He's a 7th and 8th inning guy. It wouldn't cost you as much, but he's a really quality arm, too, that I would consider getting.
Jim, 15 days before the deadline, which team are you keeping the closest eye on that needs to do something?
Boy, I'd say there are a couple of those, but, if I were choosing one, I honestly, I feel like the Dodgers, this team is almost a house of cards. As much as good as their record looks, their rotation is in shambles like it was last year. And their president of baseball operations, Andrew Friedman's also aggressive. He's not as aggressive as Dave Dombrowski, but he usually trades for impact. There's not a lot of starting pitching impact out there, but I would keep an eye on Garrett Crochet, the White Sox top starter, in a potential trade for with the Dodgers, because they really need some stability in that rotation. They don't, Kershaw's supposed to come back on a rehab assignment here soon, but I don't know what to expect there. And they got a ton of guys on the injured list. So I'm looking at the Dodgers as one of those that I would keep an eye on because, I think they'll win the division easily, but I don't think they can have any type of run in the postseason. And I don't think they would be a threat to the Phillies if they don't go out and get a starting pitcher. So if they do, watch the Dodgers in the Phillies, in the NL. Somewhere in the NL there in the postseason.
So, Jim, knowing Dave Dombrowski as well as you do, what is he looking for right now?
I mean, I think corner outfield, right? Like all right, I'll give you a name that has popped up, like a Mark Canha with Detroit, right? It's not a overall sexy name, but he would fit perfectly there. He has a great idea of the strike zone. Can play multiple outfield positions. He could play left. Outside, he could play a little bit of center field. He could also play right if you need him to. The right-handed bat, but he hits righties. Like that type of guy. And we're still trying to flesh out the rest of the market because of, there's so many teams still in the wild card mix in the National League. So there'll be another outfielder out there maybe available. But he's one guy that I think would be a really good fit. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in on him.
The whole league seems to be in the mix, right? Except for like 4 teams. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And what that does for guys that are doing your job that you had for such a long time, Jim, trying to make trades. I guess it's so hard to determine whether you're in it or not.
It really is. And no, I mean, you got normal years. You're 4 or 5 games under 500 at this time of the year. You're selling. Like you're not buying. You're not a postseason. Like I have a hard time talking about postseason teams when you're 4 or 5 games under 500. But right now, in the wild card, they put you 3 games out. You're a 4-game win streak from being in the postseason mix. I mean, the Mets just went on a huge run. They're 2. What are they? 3 over 500 right now, I believe, and they're the third. They have the 3rd wild card spot if the season ended today. So it's. And I think everybody points to the Phillies from 2 years ago, the Diamondbacks last year, 86 wins was it, Phillies, right?
Yep.
In 23 or 22, and in 23 was 84 wins for the Diamondbacks. So everyone's going, oh well, I just gotta hit that number. That'll put me in the mix. So you're certainly not trading or selling in that, and I think that it's good for baseball, it's good for fan bases, but. I'm a junkie when it comes to the trade deadline. I want to see more trade. it's killing the trade deadline.
Well, Jim, hey, man, we appreciate it. Home Run Derby tonight. Former MLGM Jim Duquette. Power Alley, weekdays from 10 to 1 on Sirius XM Major League Baseball Radio. And, of course, tomorrow, Sirius XM's coverage of the All-Star pregame programming will be live from Globe Life Field. It's basically like a Phillies pregame show tomorrow. The Phillies, 8 All-Stars against the American League. Should be a lot of fun. Jim, we appreciate a couple minutes, man.
All right, Mike. Hey, appreciate you having me on. Talk to you later.
Absolutely. Former Mets GM Jim Duquette, now with MLB Radio, and he joined us here on the Sports Bash live from Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. So let's get inside that a little bit here, all right? A lot of stuff that he just tossed our way. Number one, he said he would not trade Miller, Crawford, or Painter for Rooker. Now, he did say you're in the right area if you're talking about Mason Miller. Like, those would be the names. Now, he also doesn't think that Mason Miller is going to be traded, and his reasoning makes a lot of sense, right? He could be the Rookie of the Year, and if he's the Rookie of the Year, that gives them set up for a lot more things if you end up losing him. The other thing that he brought up, he doesn't think Lewis Roberts going to be traded, so that's an interesting one. That we haven't heard a lot of that. We keep hearing that the Phillies, are in talks there or are interested there, but he doesn't think Lewis Roberts is going to be traded. Asked him, he mentioned that he knows Dave Dombrowski really well. Okay. Knowing Dombrowski the way that you do, who's the guy that you can see, or what do you think they're looking for? And he said corner outfield, and he gave us a name. Are you guys intrigued by the name he gave, which is Mark Canha? And I would imagine if I say Mark Canha, you're not all that excited. Right-handed bat, 228, 6 homers, 34 RBI, playing for Detroit right now. And he's a guy that's been mentioned a lot. He's that veteran player, 35 years old. He's just a guy that could probably be in a left field platoon, plays a little corner outfield there. Is he a guy that would move the needle? I would imagine, I'm just going to speak for you guys a little bit out there, I got to imagine he's not pushing your pile all that much. I would imagine that if the Phillies' move was Mark Canha, who has been mentioned in the past, his name keeps coming up. He was with Milwaukee last year. The Mets had him. He was in Oakland for all those years, and that's kind of where he made a name for himself. The one year he hit 26 homers with Oakland back in 2019. But he's just a veteran, kind of a, guy that I don't think pushes anybody's pile out there.
And I think people, having seen Brett Rooker over the weekend, is definitely, what is the most recent fascinating person that you've seen. It's kind of like when someone goes car shopping and they see the car they really want and they're enamored with it. They fall in love with it. And then when they don't get the car that they really, really want for whatever reason, the money or whatever it is, they're kind of like, well, I guess this car's okay. And so I think Matt Canha definitely falls in that conversation. He's not the flashy, sexy, exciting one, but he might be, the guy that makes the most sense.
I got to be honest. He doesn't do much for me.
Well, Kevin Pillar doesn't do much for you either, but I think both of them could be legitimate options for this team, because if you're not going to sell the farm to get some of these players, then you got to take what you can get, because at the end of the day, anything is better than Christian Pache. Anything is better than Whit Merrifield.
Yeah, they definitely have to make the decision to make an upgrade over Pache. I'll agree with that. But I don't know that Mark Canha is, listen, Canha is a guy who really hasn't shown. We keep saying they need that right-handed bat that kind of hits for power. He hasn't really hit for a lot of power.
That is true.
In a while. I just don't know that he projects as the kind of guy they're looking for. That's just me. And I agree. Like he said, he's a veteran player. I definitely think that he would be an option, if they can get him for low cost. Hey, in other words, I'll give you one of my, single A guys who probably has no shot to make it to the majors, and he doesn't do anything for us. But you want a younger player, you have a 35-year-old guy, something like that. I'm not giving up anything of substance to get him.
No, and I get that, and I totally understand that. I think that, what I think is interesting is because he mentioned he doesn't think Luis Robert Jr. is getting traded. Well, we've heard his name mentioned a ton. Well, if he's not getting traded, Mike, then how does that impact the rest of the market? Like, doesn't that become a domino effect that if for example, a team like the Braves, they need outfield help too. Are the Braves going to be a team that possibly goes and gets a guy that maybe you thought you could get, and then you're less, because the Braves might overpay for someone, right? Like the Braves could call the A's and say, well, we'll give you more than the Phillies will.
Braves could call the A's and say, we'll give you more than the Phillies. Absolutely. I mean, that could be anything. I mean, but as I just said with him, what do you do when you're the GM that just had that guy in your building? How do those calls kind of go? And, it makes it more interesting for sure that, hey, come perform in our building against our team. Show our fans that you can hit in this ballpark. I think he passed the test there.
Oh, he definitely passed the test. The question is, what are the A's going to ask for him? And that's the
Well, he said flat out he wouldn't give up Miller, Painter, or Crawford.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
But what would you give up? Because that's only 3 guys. There's a whole list of other prospects that could be thrown in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy who texts in a lot. This guy's great. He always sends me like trades that are,
I know exactly who you're talking
7 players for 1. And it's like the guy that's in your fantasy football league that just offers you 7 guys that you could have got off of waivers. And you're like, I could have got those guys. If I wanted those guys, I would have picked them up myself.
I always compare it to the guy who runs the trade simulations on like a video game and then like tells you, I ran the video game on the hardest mode possible and I made this trade happen.
It's like one of those guys, and God bless, I love people who throw tons of trades out there.
It's fun, yeah.
But it's almost like I'm trying to show off that I know the Phillies farm system. And listen, most of these guys have no shot of getting to the big leagues for the Phillies.
Right.
So yes, the Phillies would trade them. But my big thing would be the other team knows that they have no shot to make it to the pros. So you just can't just keep throwing 6 and 7 guys into trades and thinking, like, how many times do a 7 for 2 happen?
Rarely.
I mean, very rarely.
I mean, I have to double check, but I pretty much remember Cliff Lee was 4 for 1, I believe.
Whatever it is, but very few times do you see a trade go down that is 7 or 6 for 1 or 6 for 2. Like the concept of taking 6 players who are 4A players and then putting 1 top level prospect in, like Mick Abel has trade value. Now that trade value has diminished. George Klassen's a guy that I don't think is enough to push a trade over yet. He's had 1 really solid year, but he's come out of right field with this year that he's had. Teams are going to want to see him do that again.
So when the Phillies got Cliff Lee, they also acquired Ben Francisco, so it was actually 4 for 2. Then when they traded him to the Mariners, it was 3 for 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of gives you an idea of like the number of players that usually get moved for a top tier player.
Yeah.
It's 3 or 4. It looks like to me, at least based on what I'm reading, 4 is kind of like the limit here.
Yeah, and like, I listen, I know a lot of the guys that he's throwing out at me, and I said before, look, you're giving me a lot of 4A players. Like, some of these guys need more experience and resume. Mm-hmm. Like Clausen, great stuff. He's had a great year, so people would be excited. But a lot of times, if you understand how these things work, many times they're going to say, okay, that's great. He's moving through your system, but I want to see him do it another year.
Right.
Now, if you're telling me he's one of the lower, like, for instance, Klassen this year was at Jersey Shore, or he's at Jersey Shore now, and he's just been okay. His ERA's like in the 4s.
Right.
He got bumped from Clearwater to Jersey Shore. In Clearwater, he was dominant, 0.71 ERA. Well, he went up 1 level, and he has not been nearly as dominant.
Right.
That's not a good sign. So to try to make him one of the top names in a trade, teams are going to say, I need to see more than a guy having an 0.71 ERA at Clearwater. Right. Especially, by the way, he's 22 years old doing that at Clearwater. You're 22 years old pitching at Clearwater. I got news for you. That's not good. I mean, So listen, you can know all the prospects you want. If you're 22 years old and you're still at Clearwater, you're going to have to do way more than that.
And that's really what it gets back to. It's less about what the Phillies have and more about what do the other teams view what the Phillies have. Like when the Phillies traded Ben Brown for Dave Robertson a couple years ago, Ben Brown was a guy the Cubs valued, and now you see him pitching in the major leagues. So sometimes it's not about who the Phillies or we think are the guys. Sometimes it's about who the other organizations think. And, you know, we have to like conjecture and project what we think they might be interested in.
All right. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Like the trade he sent me earlier, you know, Mick Abel, George Klassen, Christian McGowan, none of those guys are pushing the pile.
I mean,
not for a top level player.
Right. If you were telling me, though, that you were going to trade Mick Abel, I wouldn't be against it because I think that he has not lived up to expectation with the Philadelphia Phillies organization.
No, I definitely think look, I think the Phillies are probably calling all over the place and trying to find out who would be interested in Abel. He's the guy that I think they're saying, look, we could part with him.
Right.
If he can get something done for us. There's no question I think they would make that move.
He has not. You had three guys who were the big three for them at one point. Andrew Painter's recovering from injury, Mick Abel, who still hasn't made it to the major leagues, and Griff McGarry hasn't made it yet either. So if you're telling me that Andrew Painter is untouchable, let's say, then at some point you have to trade one of the other guys, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, especially with what their signings have kind of said, we've moved off of both of those or one of those guys because they signed Wheeler, they signed Sanchez, they've signed Nola. I would imagine Suarez is going to get a deal.
Yep.
Painter's the guy that they probably want to hold on to. So Abel does make sense in the trade. All these other guys are just
filler.
You're the guy in my fantasy league that wants my number one draft pick and offers me 5 guys that I could have got off the waiver wire.
By the way, do you remember the 4 guys the Phillies traded for Cliff Lee?
Who they got in return? Or who they traded? Jason Donald, Lou Marson, Carlos Carrasco.
One more. You routed those first 3 off.
Yeah, I remember because I remember the day that happened. Donald was a second baseman. Marson was a catcher.
Yep.
Carrasco was a pitcher.
Yep.
What was the position the other guy played?
I don't actually recognize his name. That's why I have to click on him real quick.
Yeah, it's not standing out to me.
He was a pitcher.
I don't remember.
Jason Knapp.
Yeah, I wouldn't have got that.
I gave you credit for the first 3, so I think you already won.
The first 3 were highly touted. Donald and Marson and Carrasco were like 3 of your top prospects for a while.
Yeah.
None of them could play.
Donald and Marson basically became nobodies.
Tom in Margate says, hey, Josh. Hey, Mike. I fell in love with Rooker. He should be in left field. Everybody fell in love with Rooker this weekend. I'll tell you that much. But he's not a very good outfielder. Just keep that in mind.
Rooker's the new girl who came to the high school, and everybody's like, hello.
I like the class that throws 99. I think any team would be. Everybody throws 99. That's not separating anybody anymore. Like, everybody throws 99.
Can you control it?
Yeah. I mean, if you told me he throws 109, that would be 99. That's why I say all the time, I crack up laughing. Every pitch that goes over 95 miles an hour, Xfinity's going to write a check for, what I said, every pitch is over 95 miles an hour.
I want to see those checks being written. That's what I want to know.
Sports Bash Live, Big 3, coming up next here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive.
You're listening.
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy. Zaxby's.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
You look at last year, Derek Jones and Oubre both signed in August. There's going to be more players that are probably going to land on minimum deals later this summer. Philly's going to be at the front of the line for a lot of those players. They should be able to get some guys.
That was Tim Bontemps talking about what's next for possibly the Sixers, who, by the way, it was a KJ Martin signing over the weekend. They made that deal as well. Actually, I think it happened late on Friday. So the Sixers stayed busy over the weekend. But what could be next? What else is out there? They could be finished. Or maybe they make another move. It's time for today's Big Three here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget the Home Run Derby tonight. You can listen to it on 97.3 ESPN. Alec Boehm will be one of the 8 participants in tonight's Derby. 8 o'clock is the Derby exclusively on 97.3 ESPN. Those of you watching on the X platform at Mike Gill Show, the starting lineup for the All-Star game is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Let's get into today's Big Three.
So I got other points to get to, Mike, here. I wanted to bring you what Bontemps had to say. And before we get to that, the more from the Hoop Collective podcast, the Big Three being brought to you by Boxing Insider Promotions, bringing you the boxing event of the summer. Friday, July 26th, at Tropicana showroom inside Atlantic City's Tropicana, where you can see undefeated junior middleweight Justin Figueroa return to action, as well as Absegami High School graduate Bruce Selden Jr. and top heavyweight contender Otto Wallen. All will be inside Tropicana, Atlantic City, again Friday, July 26th. Get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com for the boxing event of this summer. So for those who didn't hear the Hoop Collective podcast this morning, which I understand because a lot of people are not thinking about basketball maybe as much right now, unless you're Mike Gill, who's been watching the Summer League all weekend.
Watched some summer. Saturday, watched the Phillies game was at 4. When that game ended, Sixers game was at 7.
Yeah, very convenient for you.
Yep.
You got it all lined up. But I wanted to get to some of these points they were making on the pod because they labeled on the podcast, Tim Bontemps and Kevin Pelton joined Brian Windhorst on Hoop Collective podcast, and they made some interesting comments on the pod. You heard what he just said about how they'll be the front of the line for guys who will be available in the offseason. What I thought was interesting from Bontemps, Mike, is he talked about, and I would have never thought of this. He talked about the importance of Kyle Lowry coming back. Now, Mike, you know I have not been a huge Kyle Lowry fan of him coming back, so
I don't mind him on this team.
Here's what Bontemps had to say about the importance of Lowry being brought back.
A very big move for them over the weekend, getting Kyle Lowry back on a minimum. I was curious to see how this negotiation would go, if they would be able to get Kyle back. I think he's going to be a really important piece for them, both in the locker room and on the court. He obviously is towards the latter part of his career at this point, but showed he had a lot left in the tank when he came over from Miami after being traded to Charlotte last year in the Terry Rozier deal. Played well for them down the stretch and in the playoffs, and I think as a guy coming off the bench as a key reserve for them, really important to get him done.
I think his role is going to be more diminished on this team than it was last year.
Absolutely. But you think he still has a role, like Bontemps says, on this team? In the locker room, helping guys coming off the bench, maybe in a lesser role.
Yes. I think like last year, he was starting.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean,
shouldn't have been, but they had to.
Yeah, and Bontemps is right. He showed that he had more in the tank. I think Lowry was better here than I thought, had more of a contribution here than I thought he was going to have. I thought for the most part he actually played pretty well here. When you think about it, he played 28 minutes a game, is way more than you would envision. When they brought him over here, I didn't think he was going to have a very big role at all. I think he ended up having to have a bigger role because of some injury situations that ended up happening. But, he was steady for them. If you cut those minutes in half, and he's playing 14 minutes a game, 17 minutes a game, somewhere in that range. Now, that would be a big drop-off from where, he's played 28 minutes, played 28 minutes a game in Miami. The year before in Miami, he played 31 minutes, 33 minutes, 34. I mean, obviously the minutes are going to go up as he was younger, but he has not dipped under 28 minutes since going back to his Houston days. That was back in 2009. So he is used to playing a lot. Now, you might say, well, he's got a lot of wear and tear on the tire. That's fine. Can he play 15 to 20 minutes for this team? I think he can, and you pair him up with maybe Jared McCain, have them in the backcourt running the second unit, something like that.
I definitely think he has a role in this team. If you're telling me it's him coming off the bench, I'm much more comfortable. I just felt like last year he got way too many minutes at times. I felt like there were scenarios where it seemed, at least for me, Mike, that Nurse was like overly committed.
You know what,
Lowry.
though? I agree, but I definitely think having Maxey and Oubre will be your starting backcourt.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have Eric Gordon, McCain, and Lowry. I think those three guys kind of rotate through the second unit, and I think more of it will go, now you do need a backup ball handler to Maxey, but keep in mind, Maxey plays 35 minutes a game.
Sure,
so those extra, 13, 14, 15, 16 minutes are probably going to go to Lowry as the backup ball handler.
Right.
You put Lowry and Eric Gordon together in the backcourt, now you have a really veteran backcourt.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm more comfortable with that being the backcourt coming off the bench than I am just as a starter. That's all. My concern is that if Lowry was brought back before some of those other guys, but I will give Daryl Morey credit. He got Eric Gordon. He drafted McCain. He brought back Oubre. He did all these other moves before he brought back Lowry, so it makes me feel a little better about what their plan is.
Yes, if you brought Lowry back and that was one of your headlining deals, then I'm not as
correct
into it.
Mike, I want to get to what Kevin Pelton said. I thought I brought up some interesting points about how the money works. For those who don't know, Kevin Pelton has been on your show numerous times and talked about the inner workings of the salary cap. And I thought he made a couple interesting points, starting with, did you know, Mike, that KJ Martin was one of the keys to them making all the moves they did? Take a listen.
That was KJ Martin who signed that 2-year, $16 million deal. Sixers were able to take advantage of the fact that because he was on a minimum contract before that he had signed as a second-round pick with Houston, his cap hold as a free agent, unrestricted, was at the minimum. So they could still fit him in, use all this cap space to bring in the guys that they did. They split that up amongst PG, Drummond, Caleb Martin, and then re-sign KJ Martin, use the room exception on Oubre, minimum for Lowry and Gordon.
That's all confusing. But we've heard a lot of KJ Martin balloon deal. He kind of accentuated what that all meant, that they could give him this big deal now because of his second-round standing and what his contractual situation was, and it doesn't hurt their cap situation.
It's interesting just to think about how this was planned. Like, this is not an accident. It wasn't just like they happened to have this guy do this move. Like, there was actually a plan for all this. And we had asked weeks ago, Mike, what is Daryl Morey's plan, right? What is Daryl Morey doing with all these moves? And Pelton even described it here as that Daryl Morey, Mike, created the masterclass. And when I heard Pelton explain this, it almost reminded me a little bit of another Philadelphia executive we credit for a lot of money work, that being Howie Roseman.
It's going to be a masterclass, I think, on how to kind of maximize your cap space. It will be expensive, as you alluded to. I think it's going to be kind of fascinating because it looks like Philly has a chance to be in the luxury tax while using cap space, which is something that almost never happens. Cleveland pulled it off the summer that they brought LeBron back, but it's a team, I think, is the important thing. Like, these pieces do fit really well together, despite the fact that you had these complications of kind of being limited by the market. And that's why getting Paul George was so crucial, because he fills a lot of holes.
Yeah, he does fill a lot of holes. And I think the Sixers, you talked about it was a plan. The KJ Martin thing's a plan. The George was a plan. The plan got put into motion when they made the Harden deal of, okay, you don't want to be here? Well, what I'm going to get in return is going to push the dominoes towards next offseason.
Right.
And once he got the draft picks from the Clippers, that allowed him to have multiple avenues. I can go after get Paul George. If I can't get Paul George, I can use these draft picks to try to do stuff. But getting George to agree to come play for you allows you to keep the draft choices. And basically, what was his first option, what's behind door number one, he was able to open door number one and then just keep walking in the room.
Right.
So his first plan was the one that he wanted, obviously, but it was the one that ended up working for him.
I have to give Morey a lot of credit. I did not have incredibly high expectations for this offseason. I was trying to not get too excited about things. And I think overall, not just because guys like Bontemps and Windhorst and Pelton are telling me that they are one of the winners of the offseason, I think the Sixers legitimately deserve, Mike, a lot of credit for what they have put into motion and what they were able to do this offseason. And I give a hat tip to Daryl Morey. Good job.
Listen, if you are somebody who was skeptical of Morey, I don't question that. Morey has never won a championship. He doesn't get a free pass. I said before, he needs to start doing stuff. He did all he could do to get them to this offseason.
Right.
Okay, you did everything you could do to get us to this offseason. Now it's time to say, I got us draft picks. I got us cap space. Okay, now you got to do something. And I think he did that. So everybody who was critical of Morey because they haven't won a championship or he hasn't won a championship, you're viewing him in a, very micro level. The lens is out here of you can't just walk in to a situation, have horrible cap space situation, have a horrible cap structure, no draft choices to speak of, and then say, go be successful.
Right. It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work that way. So if you said, what has he done? What has he done? He hasn't done anything. Why? Well, he really hasn't done anything to get excited about. Mm-hmm. You're doing all the dirty work. Let me get a draft pick here. Let me trade this guy and clear up cap space there. Let me move this bad contract out. All of those things aren't exciting. So yeah, if you want to say he hasn't done anything to get you excited up to now, of course not. He did all the dirty work. He did all the mucking and grinding. He was in the corner. And now he did all the dirty work to lead up to this point. And that's go get the exciting guys. Now, Paul George, you might not be thrilled with Paul George, but there was just no other option. He was the best option on the table, and you got him.
Mike, before we wrap up the segment, I wanted to ask you, because it happened Friday night into the weekend. We didn't get a chance to talk about it last week. Jalen Brunson's new deal, 4 years, $156 million. He is taking $113 million less than he could have if he would have waited to sign next offseason. Your thoughts on Brunson's new deal taking less money for the team?
It's tremendous. He might be my favorite player in any league right now. Period. Point blank. End of story. At what point is enough, right? We all try to get, I don't, bemoan any player getting all the money that they can get. But at what point does winning a championship matter more? And this is a player who said winning the championship means more than my own personal finances. Guess what? I think he'll be okay. Right?
Oh, he'll be okay for sure.
I think he'll be okay. And guess what? He's also cognitive to say, I'm young enough right now that my best chances to win a championship is why I'm young. So I'll make $156 million. And guess what? At the end of that deal, I'll still be young enough to go get another big deal. So you might say he left $113 million, and that's tough to swallow, by the way. But guess what? I think he can purchase anything he wants to purchase, and I think he can leave money to people in his family so they can purchase whatever they want to purchase. And guess what? At the end of the day, he'll get another contract that will restock whatever he lost in his bank account, all for the opportunity to take the biggest swings at winning a championship in his prime years. You don't see people like this, but guess what? If you can't appreciate Jalen Brunson, he has gained my respect tenfold. The respect you have for a guy who says, you know what, 156, I will be more than fine. Let's get a better team around me. Wish others would take notes.
According to Bobby Marks, the deal allows them to sign the OG Anunoby deal for $212 million and re-sign Mikal Bridges next summer and stay under the first apron, Mike. So
it really, it's a team first move.
It's incredible. You may never see it again, so appreciate it while you see it right now.
You know what, though? And it's like, I hate to say, like, I hope I hope the Knicks win a championship because of that. Like, I don't want to see the Knicks win a championship because that means the Sixers aren't winning the championship.
Right.
But if somebody else can win a championship, I'm almost pulling for them to do it so that these other greedy
dudes, people, curmudgeons, schmucks.
Look around and say, do I really want to win a championship or do I really care about me first?
Right.
And it's okay to care about yourself and your financial situation, but at what point is enough enough?
Right.
To where I'd much rather win, right? What do you get into this thing for? Financial glory or winning championships? Which player do you want to be? Which player do you want to be? The guy who ended up at the end of his career with $400 million and no championships, or $278 million and a championship?
Right. Do you want to be Carmelo Anthony or Dwayne Wade?
Yeah. I mean,
it's that simple, really.
Yeah, and I'm pulling for them if they can win a championship because he made that decision. I think it would be awesome.
Mike, that's the big three.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN, at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Follow us there. You can watch the show. Hey, coming up, we'll wrap up the show and tell you how you can get involved. Happy Hour Friday all summer long. We got the details next on the Sports Bash.
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Love to have a beer with you before, during, after the show. Who knows? It's going to be a fun one. It's the first of many, though. We're going to be doing it all summer long at different establishments around South Jersey. And our first one is at Giuliano's in EHT, which we've never actually been there before with the show. I live right around the corner from Giuliano, so I've been there a bunch of times. I know we're going to be doing the Bud Light Draft Specials, $3.50 for the people out there, $4 neutral vodka seltzers. They actually have a pretty good beer selection as well. I know they have Broken Heels from New Trail, who somebody sent in on Happy Hour Friday last week. Somebody sent the picture of that. It was a double Broken Heels, by the way. So stop out, make a stop on one of these 15-year anniversary shows. Happy Hour Friday, July 26th will be our first stop. Giuliano's in EHT. All right, game night's up next. I'm Mike Gill, Alec Bohm tonight in the Derby, baby.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals. That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Chicken taco expert since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.